Good afternoon, everyone. It's Tuesday, March 4th. This is a school board workshop and the time is 1 p.m. Sergeant at Arms, has the front lobby been cleared? Yes. Thank you. Board member Giovanelli will possibly be joining us on Zoom this afternoon. There are 13 items on the agenda today: annual financial audit review, glimpse, budget over-review, safety update, annual instructional materials for science, job descriptions, construction change order report for January 2025, construction projects by monthly update, outcomes for communications, board advisory committees, board auditor, public comment, and good of the order. Per board protocol, each board member should strive for 4 minutes for initial comment, 2 for follow-up, with a total of 10 minutes for discussion. This afternoon, we are going to begin with our annual financial audit review. Please welcome Eddie Castaneda, Senior Manager, MSL, CPA, and Advisors. Danielle Jensen and Sarah Cox will be presenting this afternoon.
Good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Dr. Carlin and Attorney Dupree Bruno. My name is Sarah Cox. I'm the Executive Director for Business Services.
Hello, I'm Danielle Jensen, Director of Financial Services. Today we have a presentation by MSL, CPAs, and advisors who did our FY24 audit. MSL has been our auditor since 2016. They rotate with the Auditor General from the state, who does our audit every 3 years. Today we have Eddie Castaneda, who is a senior manager with MSL, presenting. Eddie is a member of the firm's public sector practice with more than 17 years of public accounting experience. He has performed audits and consulting services on more than 30 governmental entities. He also provides consulting services in the areas of internal controls and operational structure for government entities. So he brings a wealth of knowledge to our audits. We are very pleased to have him present our FY24 audit.
Thank you, Danielle. Well, I sound pretty impressive, huh? Thank you for having me today. As purpose of today's meeting is just to go over high-level results of the financial statement audit, your external audit, that's done by an external third party, our firm, MSL. And we could go on with the, so we are required to communicate to those charged with governance, which is this governing board, certain communications, which I'll do on this slide. Our responsibilities as auditors, we audited the school district's financial statements in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, generally accepting governmental auditing standards. That's our responsibility to conduct the audit in accordance to those standards. Management's responsibility is to provide us access to information, not prevent us from any information, that they respond to our inquiries timely and responsiveness. I want to say that we've had no disagreements with management. We're all on the same page on any accounting standards that were implemented in the current year. As part of our audit, we also do an internal control evaluation over the school district's internal controls, just over the financial statement reporting. So we don't take a look at district-wide controls, just those controls as it relates to the financial statements. There were no significant matters to address to the board. We did receive management representations that they did give us access to all personnel, all information, all files, and they responded timely to our request. And the audit was completed and in accordance with the audit schedule that was provided at the beginning of the audit. So our deliverables to the school district are our audit reports. There's a number of audit reports that's included in your annual comprehensive financial report. The first one's the audit report, which is the most important one. The district did receive an unmodified opinion, which is the quote-unquote clean opinion. There was no findings, no significant deficiencies, no material weaknesses identified. As I mentioned, that we are required to evaluate the school district's internal controls and issue a report on it, which is that second title. It's mouthy, so, but we're happy to report that we found no deficiencies in the school district's internal controls as it relates to the financial reporting. We do a single audit every year. We audit the district. This is a test to make sure that the school district's in material compliance with any grant expenditures and grant revenues that it receives federally. We're happy to say that there was no findings related to any of the school district's major programs, and no internal control deficiencies were found over those grant expenditures. Also, the Florida Auditor General requires us to issue these two last reports, the Auditor's Management Letter and the Independent Accountant's Report. The Auditor's Management Letter just goes over certain requirements that the Florida Auditor General Office requires all school districts to be in compliance with. We're happy to report that of those, the ones that they specified us to look at, there was no findings, and the school district's in compliance with those Florida statutes. The Independent Accountant's Report is a specific compliance report that the AG requires on the school district's compliance with the Florida statute over investments, and we're happy to report that the school district is in compliance with the Florida statute over investments. Next slide. And just, I'm going to keep this high, you could go to the next slide. Just very high level. These are rounded numbers just to give you a year-to-year kind of picture. Total assets and deferred outflows were up over last year. I do want to focus on that negative unrestricted number of $350 million. That is just the school district's portion of its FRS liability. So it's not really a actual liability. You're not really negative, you're not under that much. You're never going to cut a check to the FRS in that amount. It's just something that has to be reported on your financial statements per GASB and per Florida statutes. Next slide. The general fund is a better indicator as it's your operating fund as opposed to like an entity-wide, which was on the previous slide. So this is just year over year. As you can see, the net change in fund balance was 50 million. So that just means your revenues were over your expenditures by 50 million for fiscal year 24 compared to 23. Assets were up and liabilities were down in the general fund. So that's always something positive that we like to see. Next slide. And then the general fund's budget, as you could see, it did come under, but actual revenues did come under budgeted amounts. However, that was offset by the school districts coming under its budgeted expenditures by approximately, and of that swing, approximately was $100 million in instructional services that were, the expenses came in under budget for that line item, and which is the most significant portion of how the district was under. And then I'll leave it for any questions or comments. And before I do, I just want to give a special thanks to Danielle Jensen and her team, particularly Jeanette Ingersoll over there. They do a lot of the heavy lifting to produce this document and also to respond to auditor inquiries. Trust me, no one likes responding to auditors. So thank you, Danielle, and to your team.
At this time, I'm going to open it up for superintendent comments or board comments and questions.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair, first of all, I'd like to thank MSL for conducting our audit. We always are looking to get better, and we really appreciate your work in this regard. Also very proud of our team in business services. As many of you on the board know that have served for a number of years, our business services team continues to have a stellar audit. And I'm very, very proud of the work that they do as well as our entire team. So we'll turn it over to you for your comments.
Board members, any comments or questions?
No, this is an easy review. It's always nice to get a clean audit. Good
I
job.
I just want to make sure Ms. Giovanelli, is she on? Okay, I just want to double check. All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next is the glimpse. Dr. Amy Desamore, Matthew Chesser, and Lita Deet Smith will be presenting.
All right. Good afternoon, Dr. Carlin and members of the board. We are here today, myself, along with, as you said, Ms. Lita Deet Smith and Mr. Matthew Chesser, to present some information related to a glimpse or educational return on investment. And also with us today, virtually, we have members of the glimpse team that have been working with us to put information together. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Ms. Lita Deet Smith, who will share some really good information with us.
So thank you. Good afternoon. As Dr. Desmore said, I am Lita Dietz-Smith. Our goal today is to explain our partnership with Glimpse to all of you, detail our timelines of work, provide some clarity regarding return on instruction data, examine program-specific data, and discuss next steps with our return on instruction. So to begin, we'd like to talk about why we started this relationship with our partners in Glimpse. As someone who previously oversaw ESSER for the school district, we know that that brought us millions of dollars to fund various projects. With an awareness that we were going to be evaluated on those projects to spend those funds and no formal internal program evaluator, we quickly realized that as a district, we needed to do a more formal process to study the dollars that we were spending and how it was tied to student achievement. Our work with Glimpse aligns to Dr. Carlin's priorities of ensuring financial responsibility, as well as directly aligns with our strategic goals of improving internal operating systems by increasing the number of defined impact measures to improve cost effectiveness of services and value for expended funds. This slide details a timeline of work with Glimpse. We formally began our partnership with them in January 2024. And across the screen, you see how the evaluation of return on instruction came to fruition. After a year of partnership, several work group meetings, evaluations, and a focused review of our internal data systems, we now have data to start making informed decisions regarding the impact of our purchases and its impact on student achievement. This screen details the workflow with Glimpse over the course of years' time. So at the beginning of each school year, we examine all of our subscription programs that are being utilized that year, which subscriptions may no longer require evaluation, and what the user expectation is put forth by each vendor. Our information systems team members work diligently to share progress monitoring data with Glimpse, which is then vetted and critiqued to calculate the return on instruction. As you can see, the cycle continues following Progress Monitoring 2 and Progress Monitoring 3, with additional steps to import data directly from our vendors to evaluate those subscriptions. What is not captured on this slide is the continuous meetings between Glimpse, myself, and cross-divisional work groups to validate and review the imports for accuracy and validity. So before we dive into some program-specific information, it's important that I make clear some key definitions. Fidelity and utilization. Using a program to fidelity is described as a student using that program for as many minutes per week as recommended by that particular vendor. We will also talk about the difference between a core and supplemental program. A core program would be required for students as a part of our district scope and sequence, while a supplemental program would target a specific grade level or intervention for a subset of students. So why is this information important? Each vendor that we work with recommends the program's usage and impact on student achievement. The evaluation of this data and return on instruction will change based on the criteria put forth by each vendor and whether or not it's a core program. We would not expect to see the same return on instruction for a core program as we would a supplemental program, simply because the usage parameters and the number of students who are using the program would be different. So you will hear us use the term return on instruction rather than return on investment. You will also see us put an E in front. That stands for educational. Educational return on instruction helps you see how effectively your dollars are being used to boost student achievement. For instance, if you spend $10,000 on a program, the eROI shows you what percentage of that amount directly contributes to a student's success. Key factors include program usage, how many students are using the program as recommended by each vendor, and its achieved impact. So of those students, how many are showing desired growth? Why the E? It's important to note that the E in eROI because it's not the same as return on investment. Return on investment is a purely financial calculation which does not have a practical application in a classroom impact assessment. So this detailed analysis that we are getting ready to show you will evaluate the users compared to the total number of students and how much they grew academically, or how many students are proficient on a particular assessment, such as progress monitoring 1, 2, or 3. Student users are defined as full, partial, or non-users based on each vendor's usage criteria. As a part of this calculation, Glimpse has the ability to set different metrics for different programs based on the intended outcomes. So for example, some of our programs we may want to evaluate lessons passed rather than just how much a student is using the program. Now we're going to dive into some program-specific data. Our first example of return on instruction is for a core ELA program for kindergarten through 8th grade students in the 23-24 school year. We compare this data to last year's FAST ELA Progress Monitoring 3 scale score. The first dial you see on the screen represents the total amount that we allocated to that particular program, which was about $1.3 million. The second dial represents the percentage of students utilizing the program to fidelity, which is 45 minutes per week based on the vendor recommendations, and in this case, 51%. The third dial then inversely quantifies the percentage of dollars being underutilized by students who are not using the program to fidelity, 49%. Lastly, eROI is calculated at almost 36%, taking into account program users, total students intended to use the program, and its achieved impact on student growth. After seeing an initial eROI calculated at 36%, one may immediately think that this is not a good utilization of funds. However, it's important to dig into this data a little deeper. On this screen, you see two more pieces of data: net gain and user segment analysis. The net gain is the amount of our users, partial users, and non-users grew on the compared assessment over the course of the year, Progress Monitoring 1 to Progress Monitoring 3. Our students who use the program to fidelity, 45 minutes a week, grew on average over 7 percentage points on FAST ELA. Our partial users grew over 6%, and non-users by 3%. This data tells us that our users grew over double than our non-users for this particular program. The user segment analysis shows how many students grew academically in the user, partial user, and non-user categories. You can see that 79% of students who use this program to fidelity made learning gains. 72% of students who used the program partially made learning gains. And while non-users still made learning gains, it was not to the extent of our full users. I should note that when I use the term learning gains, I'm referring to the growth of a scale score, which could be 1 point or more. So if we know that growth drives proficiency, our leadership team can then use this data to answer questions such as what is our desired impact of this learning tool? And how do we increase utilization for our students if we know that it's a required core program? Now we're going to dive into a second example of return on instruction. This example is for a core math program for students K through 8 in the 23-24 school year, and we've compared this data to FAST Math Progress Monitoring 3 scale score. Again, the first dial represents the total amount allocated to the program. The second dial represents the percentage of students utilizing the program to fidelity based on the vendor recommendations. And the third dial inversely quantifies the percentage of dollars being underutilized for students that are not using the program to fidelity. Lastly, the return on instruction is calculated at almost 35%, taking into account our users, partial users, and non-users compared to the intended use of the program and its achieved impact on student growth. So again, when we see 35% ROI, one may think that's not a good utilization of funds. However, we dig a little deeper. On this screen, you see two more pieces of data again, the net gain and the user segment analysis. So again, the net gain shows us how much users, partial users, and non-users grew on a compared assessment. Our students that use this program to fidelity, 45 minutes a week, grew on average over 15 percentage points on fast math. Partial users grew by over 14% and non-users by 10%. So again, we see a positive correlation between student users and academic growth. The user segment analysis then shows us how many students grew academically in each of those categories. This analysis is extremely eye-opening regarding the number of students who grew when they utilized the program to its intended use. On average, 90% of students who used or partially used the program made math learning gains. Our last example to share with you of return on instruction is for a supplemental math program for students in grades 6 through 8 in the 23-24 school year. This data has been compared to Fast Math Progress Monitoring 3. So again, the first dial represents the total amount allocated to the program. The second dial represents the percentage of students utilizing the program to fidelity. The third dial inversely quantifies the percentage of dollars being underutilized for students not using the program to fidelity. Lastly, the EROI is calculated at almost 36%. So again, we'll take a deeper dive. The net gain is how much our users, partial users, and non-users grew on the compared assessment, Fast Math. This program does not detail the same growth as the example prior, keeping in mind it is a supplemental program geared toward a particular group of students. With that said, our users still made almost 3% more learning gains than those who did not use the program. The user segment analysis is how many students grew academically in the user, partial user, and non-user categories. It's easy to see that almost the same number of users, partial users, and non-users made gains. However, our users were less likely to decline academically. This would be an example of a program that requires additional evaluation and collaboration regarding its outcomes, and if its impact on student achievement is what we want to see. It opens up the conversation for the number of licenses being purchased for a particular product, its targeted audience of students, and whether it's working more effectively with a particular group of students, maybe by region or by school or grade level. So Glimpse provides us data that we've never had before and allows our leadership team to make more evidence-based financial decisions about the tools we're using to purchase and its impact on student achievement. These results do not mean that we immediately abandon a product, but we continue to dive deeper into what the data is showing us and what adjustments need to be changed so that we can continue to influence academic growth. To conclude our presentation, our work with Glimpse is just beginning. We will continue this school year by importing data, evaluating each program and its system, and developing a tool to assist in budget planning for the upcoming fiscal cycle. Currently, our members of cabinet, including our chiefs, are working with the vendor, Glimpse, and establishing a plan related to intended users who will be utilizing this platform and to what capacity. We will start to compare programs that are similar, their outcomes, and which products achieve the most impact for our students. We will begin to evaluate cohorts of students over years' time to see if the continued use of programs make a larger impact on a particular group than others. We will also begin to monitor professional learning outcomes and evaluate if our professional learning opportunities for teachers is making a direct impact on student achievement. Lastly, we will continue to analyze data by subgroups and ensure that specific subsets of students are receiving high-impact targeted supports. At this time, we open it up for comments and questions.
Superintendent?
Yes, thank you, ma'am. So as we talked about with our team, first of all, thank you for your presentation today. I know that this is something that the board has been looking forward to, and so we're really excited to bring this to you today, and we look forward to your conversation. I do want to share with you that educational return on instruction is a relatively newer term. We always think about ROI, return on investment, but this actually gives us a real peek into, as we shared in our presentation, into our programs and the things that we're doing that seem to be adding value value, and we get to look at it by our users, non-users. And so I thought that data was really very powerful as we go forward making decisions about programs we're going to hang on to and programs that we might eventually say, this isn't adding as much punch behind the types of things we need to be doing. So I look forward to your conversation, knowing that student achievement is one of our top priorities.
Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Great presentation. I really appreciated this one, especially, all of us hear about that we have so many programs in the district. How do you manage it? How do you know they're effective? So my question, looking at it on the eROI, and I get we're kind of in a first year benchmark, how do we know, for example, you have 35% there. How do we know what that means? Is there a benchmark, or are we just benchmarking against ourselves for the future?
So that, right now, there really isn't a benchmark. We're looking to see right now what our, this data is showing us, how we can best analyze it, and how we use that information to make the appropriate decisions moving forward. So we can't give you a number at this point to say, well, it's this percentage or this, but this data that we're gathering right now is going to help us determine how do we analyze it in the future.
And that's what I meant. So we're looking at ourselves and going to benchmark out to the future and see how we make those. So,
yes,
thank
absolutely.
you.
Any other questions, board members? Ms. Jordan?
Thank you. I know I've been asking for this for a long time, so thank you for this. I guess we were talking about the 45 minutes per week. So is that 45 minutes per week? And I thought I heard you, and I can't go back because my computer's not running right. Mm-hmm. Is it mandatory? Because it says it, I thought I heard you say it was, but then we speak about the non-users. So if it's mandatory for the 45 minutes per week, how are we not making it mandatory, and how are we, do you understand what I'm saying? So I'm trying to wrap my head around, it's mandatory, but it's not happening.
I do. So I think it's important to note that each vendor puts forth that recommendation of minutes per week, and then we determine if it's core or supplemental. So yes, it is a core program, the one that you're asking about, 45 minutes a week, and that's part of the leadership discussion of those students that are not using the program to fidelity. How do we increase, because we know that it's giving us a good return on instruction, we know that the program is working. How do we communicate that to our schools to say, what plan do we put forth in place so that those children move out of that partial user category into that full user category?
So I guess my question then would be, who's responsible for that taking place? Who's responsible for that 45 minutes if that's what we're requiring, 45 minutes, and we see that it does move the needle? How do we need to make sure that that is happening, and who is responsible for that?
Yeah, I can jump in on that if that's okay.
Thank you.
So yes, so we absolutely in schools, and having been a principal for a number of years, we want everything to be perfect as principals. We do. We want everything to come off exactly as we intend. Being in a classroom and having taught for a number of years, I know Ms. Fleming will agree with this, every best plan that you create does not always work perfectly because we work with children, right? And so one of the things we want to always do, just like Ms. Leet said, is look at what the programs are recommending and try very hard to get there. There are a wide variety of variables that we can certainly, we'll provide more about that offline with you. But like I said, our goal every day is for perfection. Sometimes we don't hit the mark. And there are a lot of reasons why children might miss. Sometimes children are absent. Sometimes children are needing to go to the nurse. Sometimes children need to go to other places. So it does happen. And we don't always hit, everything that we plan for every single child. We aim for it, and our teachers work really hard to do that, and our principals work hard to monitor. But there are situations where children may not be in class, or children may have missed a particular item. Children may have an intervention program maybe that they need to do. So again, we always create lesson plans for the best case scenario, but that doesn't always happen because we're working with children.
Okay, thank you. And then my next question too, is there a way to determine by, I think you said by region, who is best using it? Is it the West Zone or zones even? What areas are really doing well at this and what areas are not? Because that, again, could help us maybe,
So while I can't answer that specifically right now because I don't have the platform pulled up in front of me, we do have the ability to monitor the data by those particular subgroups. So yes, we can absolutely take a deeper dive by region. We can look at particular schools. We can look all the way down to the teacher and student level in the classroom. So we do have a lot of ability to do that within the platform.
okay, not necessarily even subgroups, just what areas, and remove the subgroups out of there. And then, I'm sorry, I have one more. Okay, and then the allocated cost. So once that cost, all the funds that we just seen, once that's gone, that's still, we're still looking at it retaining that cost for other programs, or, because I know you were Esther, so I mean, where's that money coming from?
Yes, so of course
what I
that
was
would be a big financial decision to make, but we're hoping that the data that the platform provides helps us make continued financial decisions about the best programs that we're spending funds on.
So was your question, how do we continue programs we had before under ESSER? Is that what your question was?
Well, I'm just, because we've seen those large numbers, so is that money already budgeted for the next coming year? Because I know we have the benchmark that we're just creating, to move forward. So in doing that, the funds will have to be there for those benchmarks to exceed. So is that money already allocated for the next coming years? Is that already in the budget for these programs that we're trying to see if they work or they don't work?
Yeah, so well, we're still in the process of building the budget for next year. And so as we are doing, or as we're finishing that building process, then anything that we determine as a district we want to continue will have to be built into the budget. So the decisions that we make, we'll have to build them in there if that's the decision we make. I mean, there could be some decisions that are made that, well, if usage is low or for whatever reason may be, that there may be some reason not to continue them, right? That may have something to do with this information or not, but anything that's deemed that we want to continue for next year, we'll have to build the budget around those decisions.
And there's also a lot of programs that have overlap. So when you're looking at competing programs, if one gets you a better bang for the buck and, you're looking at limited, dollars as we are every given year, you can look at that and say, well, the one that gets us a 6% gain, should be the one that moves forward over the one that gets a 3% gain, whatever it might be. So anytime we have an overlap, this is, a great tool for looking at those kind of competing resources.
Thank you.
And if I may, through the chair, if I can just piggyback on that, that is exactly one of the things I was going to mention as you concluded your comments, was relative to every single year we take a look at our budget. We take a look at what is working and what is not. And I will just share with you that our chief academic officer, that has been a big part of his job this year, has been to look at the wide variety of programs we have and to be very discerning about which programs are getting the best bang for their buck and which ones do we need to maybe say goodbye to. So that's been a big part of his work. Thank you.
Mr. Persons, and then Ms. Chaviano, I think, has something.
While I find this information useful, to me, what would be more useful is how are the students using it, stacking up against the state kids? I'd like to actually see the score, the progress monitoring score. Are we 2 points behind, 2 points ahead, wherever? I know we get that information, but not through a program. Is there a way to do that on this program? Because what we're saying right now is a student could be way below and he's doing better, but how is that program bringing us up to where we're supposed to be? That to me is just as important as are they personally improving. We need to look at the district. What kind of bang for the buck are we getting district-wide, score-wise?
I understand the question. I think it's a little bit of a different analysis than what this program gives us, but certainly understand the question.
I just didn't know if there was a way to use Glimpse to get that information by input. Because obviously you had to put in their score. You're using the progress monitoring anyway. just to see where we are. That's all. I didn't know if we could program that in or something.
I'll be happy to take that back
Okay.
to the team. Thank you.
Thank you for putting the information together. I just had a question on slides 9 and 11. Obviously with math and language being our biggest kind of low scoring areas, since this is for 23 and 24, are these same core programs being reviewed in 24, 25, or are there different programs being reviewed?
Yes, ma'am, same programs.
So we'll have a new benchmark once this year is done compared to this group of students?
Yes, ma'am.
So similar to Ms. Jordan's question on the utilization component, when we talk about supplemental, which isn't what these numbers are, these are core and required. When I think of supplemental, I think of like iReady, iExcel. Those are supplemental courses that we give our kids. I know my kids have to do them. With the core component and planning and the hours in the day, is this something that's incorporated or broken up to hit that in the week? Do we know of how that's broken up? Like what the requirement is to hit the 45? Is it 10 minutes a day? Like, do we know how the suggested rollout is?
So I think each school probably has a little bit of autonomy with how they get those minutes met each week. So I can't answer that specifically, but I'd be happy to work with Dr. Shaker and his team through academic services to provide you a more detailed response as to how those students meet that criteria, that required criteria on a weekly basis.
Yeah, so it's kind of piggybacking on those same things, since it's kind of falling within the district scope and sequence, right? Those are the required pieces. And specifically even for math, it's an even lower utilization than our language. And that's where we just don't perform the best. I'd be curious to see what that plan of action is.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
My questions are similar to what has been asked, but I'm going to just stretch it a bit further. Ms. Jordan hit a good point about, I think it's, if I were listening out in the public, I mean, as an educator, it's one thing, but if I was, a parent, they're probably a little confused. What is glimpse? What even is glimpse? I mean, so would you mind giving like sort of a layman terms, Dr. Carlin, about that?
And the team will probably back me up here. I'm going to give a very cursory understanding, having been the new employee here. But basically, what we're trying to do is trying to take a look at programs that we have in our schools, like when we talk about the educational return on instruction, and it's really trying to figure out for money that we're spending, are we getting the return that we expect? So, for example, on slide 8, it basically talks about how effectively are the dollars being used to help us improve student achievement. So it's really like we said, the educational return on instruction. That's what we're looking at.
Okay, thank you. And yes, and so I think what Ms. Jordan, and correct me if I got this wrong, but when I was looking at these slides, like for example, slides 10, 12, 14, when you're in the public and you hear partial user, I would say, well, why isn't everyone using this, no matter what school you were at? So I think that is maybe what you were asking earlier. Is it an option? Is it an option school to school, or is this required throughout the district if we have purchased a material for a core subject? Is every school required to instruct from that material?
I'm going to ask our Chief Academic Officer to join us, please. He's going to be able to answer some of these questions. Thank you. I know what my answer is, but I want to make sure he's speaking on behalf of our schools.
Well, it seems there's an extra chair for me, right? So that'll be perfect. Welcome. Yeah. Hi, I will do my best to answer some of the questions about a core and a supplemental. So a core program may be important to consider core and required. So an example of a core program would be iReady in our district. It wouldn't be supplemental. We have an implementation criteria, which is 45 minutes a week. The partial user portion of that may indicate that a student week over week missed 1 week or missed 2 weeks of hitting that 45-minute mark. So they might fall into the partial user criteria. I think one of the things I've enjoyed about working with Glimpse is they're a very interactive team, and as we talk with them about what criteria we want to see in fidelity and in partial and non-user, they've been very responsive in being able to respond to that. So if I can keep going, for example, iReady. iReady is a program we want to look at not just are students accomplishing 45 minutes a week, but are they passing the activities that they're doing. So 45 minutes a week is only valuable if you're working productively on it and moving forward. So Glimpse has been able to add that criteria into their definition of what is a partial user versus a full user. A program like IXL, Ms. Shaviano, which I know you had mentioned, that would be a supplemental program for us. It's not something that really from a district level we say needs to be used or should be used. iReady is something we set a district criteria for what should be used. Does that help?
Yes, so all of these materials that are purchased with lots and lots of taxpayer money, they're expensive. Programs are expensive. Our math books, our reading curriculum. So here's what's frustrating, I think, for teachers. We get these programs, like Dr. Carlin said, we have high hopes. They came with fireworks and all these special things that a teacher can do in a classroom, and then they just sort of fall short as to what we were hoping that that program would bring. So then we have to divert, pivot. But that curriculum, curriculum is covering standards. They're covering benchmarks that need to be taught. So from a teacher's perspective, when we change course and we course correct and we have to go research and get new curriculum, now teachers have to, they get frustrated, and I feel like I see a lot of head nodding. They get frustrated because they started one thing, now we've pivoted, and now they're having to go to another workshop and another training and, for something that didn't work in the first place. So can we maybe address how do we course correct there without frustrating our educators?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll take an initial stab, and then I'd like Dr. Shaker to jump in. So as I mentioned a few minutes ago, one of the blessings of having Dr. Shaker in the role, one of many, is that he, number one, just came from a school, so he totally understands what the teachers are dealing with and what the students are encountering. And two, his charge has been to look at the wide array of programs that we have had on the menu over the last several years, and to work with his team to be very discerning. This works, we're seeing evidence of it. I wonder about this, which is a great reason to use Glimpse. I'm not sure if this is working, let's look at that. And then also having those conversations with principals and with teachers to say, what are you finding at the schoolhouse? Because I totally agree with you, Ms. Fleming. We have vendors that can make it sound like it is absolutely the next best thing since sliced bread. But when it comes down to what is in the classroom, what is getting the best bang for our buck, and some of those things we've traditionally done, I've challenged our team to say, step back for a moment, pause. What evidence do we have to indicate that that is moving the needle for children or not? And that's some of the work, and I give tremendous kudos to Dr. Shaker and his team for being very intentional with that work, for stepping back and looking what's happened over the last several years. Why have we continued to decrease overall in our proficiency? And to his credit, he and his team have been very thoughtful about, this is what I'm seeing in the classrooms, this is what's working, these are the things I'm not sure about, and these are the things we definitely have to stop doing. And how do we make that more palatable for teachers? I think when they start to see the success that comes from doing less better, I think we'll start to see more buy-in with that. But when you're right, every year we keep throwing 6 new things at teachers, that is very stressful to them. And I want Dr. Shaker to jump in if there's anything that I missed.
No, Dr. Cohen, I appreciate it. Our focus has been on people over programs, and that's been something we're definitely looking for. What I appreciate about Glimpse here is showing us that reading program and that math program at a pivotal time like now, when we're reconsidering contracts. That decision would often be made based on anecdotal evidence, pieces that we've heard. looking at that reading program, we see that it has an effect. So our decision going forward to continue that contract, but not also to go to our principals and say, guys, the evidence is indisputable that this is high functioning. I need, as we get almost bi-weekly usage reports from that particular company. As we pass down these usage reports, this is something you should talk with your teachers about and reinforce it. So we're really getting two benefits out of it, helping us make the decision to continue, but also having a very clear indicator and tool to promote its usage.
Thank you. So I feel like this is a great time for me to just put a little tag on this, because many of us are on the campaign trail and are out in the community, and some of you just came off of the campaign trail yourself. And when I was campaigning, I heard a lot, just get back to classical education. I was a teacher. When I first started teaching, I was on a chalkboard. By the end of my educational career, I was able to use a finger on a white thing and sign off on it with like laser light. So sometimes I feel like, just because it has sparkle and all of the fun things, it's okay to go back to paper pencil every once in a while. So I just feel like I had to put that little snippet out there. But any other questions or comments? All right, thank you guys so much for this today. I'm going to move on to next for our budget overview. Oh, Ms. Desimore, Dr. Desimore, don't move because you're staying there. Okay.
I'll stay right here.
And Kelly Lecter will also be joining her.
All right, well, good afternoon again. So this is, I believe, our second or third stop in talking about the budget formulation for next year, for fiscal year 2026. We have a couple new pieces of information to show and share with you today, and then just going to give kind of a general information about what the timeline looks like in terms of how we build the budget and then what happens next. So I'll turn it over to Mrs. Letcher, who will take you through our presentation today.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to start with the governor's budget. We received the governor's budget a couple of weeks ago. I do want to point out that it's really hard to figure out where we're going from the governor's budget. Years ago, and that's what happens when you've been here for years, the governor's budget was a high point, right? It would come in really high, and you knew you were going to get something under that. The last couple of years, it's kind of flip-flopped, where the governor's budget has been lower than what we've actually received later on. So I'm going to give you information based on the governor's budget, but I'm not sure where we're going to end when the legislative session is done. So the governor's budget is showing us with an increase in FTE of 1,971. That breaks out, the Family Empowerment Scholarships increase was 919 of that, and the district and charter schools was 1,052. We're still waiting to get the finalized numbers through the FTE projections with DOE, and so hopefully we'll be able to bring that back to you next time that we're talking with the projections and what we've agreed to with DOE. The base student allocation, the governor increased it by $94.94. It's now, he is recommending $5,426. His total funding increase was $34.9 million. The breakout of that is the Family Empowerment Scholarship portion was getting a $10.7 million increase, and the district schools and charter schools was $24.1 million. There were some of those categoricals, those set-asides that have requirements attached to them in the budget. The educational enrichment, and some of you might remember that as the supplemental academic or SAI, is showing a reduction of about 2.2 for Lee County. Our ESE guaranteed allocation, that is the additional dollars given for our students with exceptionalities that are like speech and things like that and gifted, has decreased 4.6 in his plan. There were increases in other areas, such as safe schools increased about $363,000, and mental health increased about $398,000. Overall, the increases to district and charter funds per FTE was about 1.5%. However, the overall increase for the scholarship FTE was about 3.5% per FTE.
So just to be clear, in the governor's budget recommendation, then, this is just the first blush from the state. Of course, legislative action has to take place for us to get our final budget and a final EFP run, but this is just our first indication of what may happen at the state level. So this is that information for you.
And there was also an attachment with the actual pieces broken out if you wanted to, take a look at it deeper. So we're going to flip over to school allocations and how we're allocating dollars to our schools. We're in the process of doing that right now. Our schools have three major funding sources, which is their district resource allocations, or you may hear them referred to as DRAs, the Title I and IDEA. We will be releasing these allocations to our schools at the end of March. And it is the largest single budgeted item in the general fund. Right now for this year, we have over $600 million going to our schools just through the DRA process. And there's other funding that goes outside of that, but that's just through that process. I want to kind of go over, I know it's kind of hard to see, what a school sees when they get their funding. So when you're looking at this, you can see the FTE, that is the students and the program areas that the students are reported in. And then the weighted FTE, that takes the FTE and weights it out so that it creates an additional dollars based on the students and where they fall. We come to a total amount for that, which is basically doing the same thing the state does for us, which is taking the base student allocation and the comparable wage factor and coming to that number. We have found that our ESOL population, of course, is very high, and we have a lot of needs in that area. So for our schools with a high ESOL population, we have added an additional allocation above to help them with the students in that area. When a student is reported in the area with the ESE guarantee, we give the schools a little bit of extra money to cover that ESE guarantee needs that they have. And then we also give them money for class size. In order to help meet class size, we give them based on an allocation to help meet the class size and on top of that as well. For some of our schools that are smaller, we have to provide an additional allocation in order for them to have just the basic requirements, because they are so small, their student population may not generate enough to have the needs of what the students have. If they have a self-contained classroom, one of those higher level ESE needs, we provide a teacher and a para for every self-contained classroom in the district. And then what we do is we back out the weighted funding for those students so that it covers some of it, not all of it. And then they come to a number, and that number provides them the flexibility then to do what they need to do in their school based on their student population. There are requirements for them. They need to meet class size. They need to meet the students' IEP needs and ESOL needs and things like that. And we work with the regional superintendents to make sure that all of those needs are being met and with the allocations that they have.
So as Kelly mentioned, the school allocations will be released sometime at the end of March. Of course, the legislative process isn't over with yet. And so there's a lot of information that we don't know when we're releasing the school allocation. But it's necessary to do so at that time because it's for next school year. So therefore, schools have to plan now related to what personnel, what resources they will have in the next school year. And then they use that information so that we meet all of the personnel timelines that we have in terms of reappointments, non-reappointments, that transfers from one school to another as employees make decisions about what they're going to do over the summer and for next year. So that's the reason why the timeline is what it is. So when we are formulating the school allocations, then we have to take the very best information we have, which is basically what you're seeing now, make some assumptions, and then upon those assumptions, create those allocations for schools for next year. Then as we get additional information, as our legislative process ends, as our budget finalizes, there may be some updates to that that we make, but we have to make the decisions now based on what we know.
So moving forward, what we're working on right now is our school-by-school projections. We look at what planning is doing with the the capacities, we look at when the batches run, where the student population is landing, and we come up with a school-by-school projection that we provide to the schools to use for their initial allocations and what their needs are. There'll also be, we're preparing the Title I and the IDA allocations right now while we're going through this process, so that they get all of their allocations by March 31st, so that they can make good decisions with all of their funding sources. We then watch throughout the summer, because through the summer we have kids that are coming and going, and so we watch throughout the summer to make sure that the schools have what they need to meet the students that are showing up as they're coming through. We may have a school that just grows immensely over the summer that we had not anticipated, and we want to make sure that we give the resources to the schools to have people in place when the kids show up. We then look again at day 10 and see what kids actually showed up. Sometimes we'll have kids that are enrolled and then don't show up, and the schools will remove them, and we'll do another allocation at day 10 and look at did the kids come or did more kids come, and we'll readjust their allocations at that time to make sure they have the resources they need. And then we'll do it again after the October FTE survey. And we do an October and then project for February, depending on how a school's history is moving forward. I'm going to skip on over now to family empowerment scholarships, just so you all have some understanding of that and where we are. There are two types of family empowerment scholarships. There's the educational options, which is open to any K-12 student, and they can participate in a private school, they can be homeschooled and things like that. Then there's the unique abilities, or the UA program, which is really the students with disabilities and allowing them some additional educational options in private schools and things like that. Those are the two types of the family empowerment scholarships. The educational options, of course, is the largest of the two. We put in a breakdown from the past years into the projection from the governor's budget of what those look like, how they break out in the district and the percentages. As you can see on this was the second calculation for 2025. The district had 81% of the student population of the total amount. Charter schools were at 12%, and the FES was at 6.56%. When we look at what the governor's budget was projecting out, they were projecting the district to be at just under 81%, the charter schools to stay right around 12%, and for the family empowerment scholarships to jump up to about 7.28%. So that's the breakout as we look over year to year, the growth in the different areas. So you can see the district is still growing, even though family empowerment scholarships have been in place and are growing as well.
And this was in response or in follow-up to the question that I believe Mr. Fisher asked at the last briefing. So hopefully this is providing some of the information that you are wanting to see.
At this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Carlin and you all for discussion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gusmores. Ms. Fletcher, thank you for always coming well prepared and providing us with wonderful information about our budget. I do want to recognize that today is the first day of session in Tallahassee, and so obviously we're wishing all of our legislators a great session, and very importantly, watching what's going to be happening in terms of the budget and the policy work up there. So with that, I'll turn it over to the board for your discussion and questions.
Board members, any comments or questions? Ms. Shaviano?
Thank you for putting all the numbers together. I do have a question for slide 7, just in terms of numbers for scholarship. Do we have an idea of how many students the district is losing to private schools with those scholarships?
Well, we do have a withdrawal code that details like the number of students that we have that withdrew, that went to private, I do believe. So we could provide that information. The information that was provided on the other slide, the last slide of the presentation, really just shows the total breakout.
Right.
That doesn't necessarily mean that those the students that are now in FES actually were ever here. They might not have ever been here, and according to the numbers, it kind of seems like that's what it was, but we do have some students that have left us for private school. We can provide those breakouts of what those withdrawal numbers show.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. Thank you for this presentation. Thank you for including that. I'll probably have some follow-up later, but thank you. One thing I wanted to highlight, and it's kind of a little bit related to what Dr. Carlin just said. So we're looking at the governor's budget recommendation. Can we go to page 2, the BSA?
Sorry. Completely backwards, so. Sorry. There you go. There we go.
Thank you, and this is a little bit tangential to it, but one of the important things that really Dr. Carlin has helped put in place is our government relations team. And this is between government relations, our lobbyists, and our school board, and probably this is both for our new school board members and the public. This is where some of those utilization is so important. So like, for example, where it says 1.7% base student allocation increase, I believe is a little bit similar last year, but through lobbying efforts and through that, we're able to get it to, was it like 2.4, 2.5, something like that, where the rest of the school districts gotten 2%. So you look at that, so let's give a real world number. Let's say, talks about 5426 on a 1.7% increase. Let's say we're able to jump that up to 2.5%. Doesn't sound like much. That's about $38 per student on FTE. Doesn't sound like much. So change that to, let's say 100,000 students. That's a difference of $4 million right there. So as I said, to our newer board members and to the public, this is why we do that. This is why we go up there. This is why we need to have a strong government relations team. These are some of the areas, and there's many others with that. So I just wanted to make sure to highlight that to the public. That's one of our big bonuses we're able to do with this, is to really affect that change across the state. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I
Mr.
just
Riggle?
wanted to make a comment. I had an excellent one-on-one onboarding session with Dr. Desimore. Yeah, I just wanted to comment. I had an excellent one-on-one onboarding session yesterday with Dr. Desimore, and I thought you did a great job, and I was really pleased with the time you spent going through some of these numbers with me. So thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, seeing no other comments, thank you so much.
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
Next is safety update by Dave Nolan.
Good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Denise Carlin, and our board attorney, Dupree Bruno. This is one of our safety updates for the month, and I thought I'd bring forward to you today the information on Fortify, Florida. We talk about it a lot, but I want to provide some history, not only for you, but for the public as well, and give everybody an idea of how many tips we get per year, per month, and what does that look like. A little bit of background. Fortify Florida is a suspicious activity reporting app that was created by the Florida legislature in 2018. The app was developed in response to the mass shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida in 2018. This was part of the Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School Public Safety Act. The app was developed by the Office of the Attorney General, Florida Department of Education, and Florida Department of Law Enforcement. The students from Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School named the app. And again, the purpose was to allow students and individuals to anonymously report suspicious activity, including threats, violence, and criminal activity. And the app then sends direct reports directly to the school officials and law enforcement agencies. Again, the features: this app is available for Android and Apple devices. It does notify the reporting party if they choose to disclose their identity. It maintains the confidentiality of the reporting party's identity if they choose to, and the app may provide the IP address of the device used to submit a false tip to law enforcement. There is training. New students transferring to Florida schools are required to receive training on how to use the app, and I'll go into that in the next few slides as well. That's part of the House bill that came out in 1473, that we had some new changes this year that talked about that. So to give you an idea of the year-to-year, mid-year comparison, because obviously right now we're only to mid-year of this current year. So going back to 2022, of August to December, there was a total of 106 total of Fortify Florida tips. In 23, same mid-year comparison, 179. And then right now, to date, we have 433. And I'm going to give you some more information about that. I'm going to go back to this and kind of give some reasoning possibly why, and also the substance that is included with Fortify Florida and what's reported. So if you have a year comparison to Fortify Florida, again, we haven't got to a full year yet, but just to give you an idea, in 2022, we had a total of 285 tips. In 2023 to 24, that year was, again, that was 494, and right now we're already at 497, half the year. So part of the question comes up is looking at things, what's changed? What could maybe have increased the volume we're getting at Fortify Florida tips? So then you look at the number of schools we have going back to 22 to currently, increase in students, possibly even charter school students as well, to take that in consideration. I'm sure it has some effect a little bit, because that's obviously increased every year a little bit, but that's part of it when you look at that as well. And also, as I mentioned before, one of the big things in legislation was the House Bill 1473. As you all remember, going back to the fall, within the first 5 days of the school year, each district school must ensure that instruction of the use of Fortify Florida is provided to students. So last year, we developed a video based on the age of children in elementary school and middle school and high school to review Fortify Florida, remind them what the purpose of it's for, and how to use it, and so forth. And then again, just recently, there was an additional requirement that are now applied to parents, the training for parents and guardians on how to use Fortify Florida before the start of the school year, and at the time of student enrollment as well, that also will be required. So I want to go back to the mid-year comparison. So when I got the information from the state, they give you a lot of raw data just of the total amount. If you look at, when I looked at 2022, out of the 106 total Fortify Florida tips, when I look at those tips that would be more of those that are going to a threat to hurt somebody else or others, that was about 31% of those 106 total tips. If you look at 2023, there was a total of 15%. That was a threat towards themselves or others. And then so far for this year, going mid-year at a total of 433, we're at 18%. So a lot of those, again, to answer the question, a lot of those are not serious threats. These are just, could be any information that's put on a tip by anything. But I think part of this too is that there's a combination of the current change in 1473 of the reminder of how to use Fortify Florida, that it's out there. We want people to use it. We want to encourage them to use, that's what it's for. But I think also that, as well as looking at just the information that's been provided. So it's interesting to look at the information, just to give you everybody an idea of how much we receive as Fortify Florida tips. And this is just one mechanism how you can report things. Just one. We get things other ways too. This is the main one that through Safe Schools is a tool providing everybody's Chromebook, easy accessible, and you can remain anonymous. So I thought it was important information to provide and to get some history and background about Fortify Florida and just kind of how it came about. And I'll stand by for any questions.
Thank you very much, Chief Newland. As the board knows, Fortify Florida is a very important tool in our communication and safety toolbox. We absolutely are proud of our students and our staff and our families when they report things that they are concerned about in our schools, in our community, and just want to thank them and continue to encourage them to come forward when they see things that don't look quite right. We want to make sure that we look at everything that comes forward. Mr. Newland is Again, we're very proud of the work that he does in this district, but very proud of our schools for promoting this communication tool and for making sure that children and families know that this is the place to report it. We need you to report it. We will look at it. If it's not credible, fine, no problem. We'd rather know about it and look at it and say, gosh, this didn't happen. But we do not want to become complacent and sit back and say, we should have said something and we didn't. So we look forward to your comments and your discussion today.
Ms. Jordan.
I just have one quick question. Thank you very much for all that you do. So if a new child comes into the district, when they go to the school then within the X amount of days will have them do this, watch the video, and then put it in their file that they have done that?
Yes, in the first 5 days of the school year, everybody has to review the video, but also a student that's just come in new to the school, let's say moves from out of state, comes to Lee County, once they enroll, the student and the parents will go through that same as well, the Fortify Florida, how that works and how to use it. And
is that done at the school and then it's put in their file that they have fulfilled those requirements?
So the whole school has to, they play at the school itself that indicate, and they have to record that's been played within the first 5 days.
Okay.
But also, it's also a video resupply, again, through student enrollment to make sure once they enroll, the parents are also given information as well.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Persons.
What about multiple tips on the same person? How's that reported? For instance, Jada and I each make a call about Sam and report him. I mean, is that counted as two on Fortify? I mean, if we do it separately, or do they lump those together if it was the same person? I imagine some are the same.
Yeah, I mean, there are some that are the same, but there are some that may be a follow-up of additional information. So they are counted separately. But again, to me, if you're having different people report it, that's important. We want them to report it. So they do count those separately.
No, I agree. I think it's just more awareness is getting more people. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Ms. Shaviano?
Thank you for that. So for the annual training for the parents, has that started yet? Because I know it came out in 24. So that's already been released to the parents?
Yes, we have. Yeah, we did. So we got that notification. We developed the video. It is completed. It's available. Yes.
So how are the parents notified of the training?
So I'm giving communications to verify how they. I want to say, I don't want to get the information. I want to say it's available on our website, but I want to make sure that before I say that.
Okay.
I'll come back to you with that one.
Jordan.
I would be curious then, because we have 3 parents who have students in the actual schools, and if they've already had the training.
I'll definitely get back to the information.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Next is our annual instructional materials. This is going to be regarding science. Presenting this afternoon is Dr. Nathan Shaker, Karen Babwar, and Sydney Davida.
Good afternoon, Board. Good afternoon, Superintendent. We're here today to share some information about our science adoption that's going to take place. This is really the first of 3 steps. Ms. Baber is going to lead you off, but I was just going to share a little bit of basic information about the process. So when an adoption occurs, the state as the first to really review the materials, take invitations for materials, that occurred last spring. So the state made a call for science materials in the spring of 2023. Really between the fall and the spring, the Florida Department of Education reviews with experts, parents, community members. That process all took place last year. In July, this last July, the Florida Department of Education posted the state adopted materials for science. And Lee County then, at the start of this year, invited only state-adopted publishers to participate in our Lee County adoption process. So this is really the system that we follow for all of our textbook adoptions to make sure that we have strong cohesion, strong alignment with the Florida Department of Education.
Okay. So we started our adoption process in September. Where I met with all of those state-adopted publishers and kind of briefed them on the process for Lee County and how we run our adoption process. Then we had our annual publisher showcase, which we opened up for the public to come in. The publishers are here in district, and it's open for the public to come and meet with the publishers and ask any questions at that time. In October, we then had our committees, created our committees with our schools. We trained our committees in teaching them how Lee County runs our adoption process, as well as we briefed them on the state's process for reviewing instructional materials. At the end of September and the beginning of October, we had our publisher presentations where our publishers came in. They presented to our committees. Our committees were able to take notes and ask questions. And we waited a week before our deliberation process. And we do that so that those teachers and the students that are participating in the adoption can go back to the school and discuss with their team members, their grade levels, content areas, and gather information to bring back for deliberation day. And on deliberation day, our teachers and community members were able to then meet. They do activities, they have rubrics where they'll go through and really take deep dives into those materials and to see which of the materials they were going to recommend for adoption. So our committees consisted of elementary science, middle school science for comprehensive courses 1, 2, and 3, high school biology, chemistry, physics, anatomy and physiology, marine science, environmental science, forensic science, earth-space science, and physical science. So they had a big job to do. Those committees were made up of teachers, administrators, and we did have students and parents on it as well. The science committee recommendations for elementary, they recommended Florida Savvis Science Exploration. For middle school, they recommended McGraw-Hill Florida Science. High school biology was Florida Savvis, Florida Miller and Levine Experience Biology. For high school chemistry was McGraw-Hill Florida Chemistry. For physics was Pasco Essential Physics. For high school's anatomy and physiology, McGraw-Hill's Florida Holes Essentials of Anatomy and Physiology. High school marine science was McGraw-Hill's Marine Science. High school forensic science was Cengage Forensic Science, Fundamentals and Investigations. High school environmental science recommended Cengage Environmental Science, Sustaining Your World, the Florida edition. And high school's earth, space, and physical science recommended the McGraw-Hill Florida books for earth, space, and physical science. And our committees put together a rationale explaining everything they loved about the different programs. I'm not going to read them all to you today. I know we are low on time, but because the state already went through that rigorous approval process, our committees were very confident that the materials were aligned to the state standards and they were aligned to the mission or the vision of the state for instructional materials. So when they selected, they really looked at these materials, their whole thing was, which of these materials were going to best meet the needs of our teachers and our students? So that's really what they were looking through and looking for. And they really felt that these programs really met the needs for all our teachers, our beginning teachers and brand new who have never taught, so they had enough resources and supports for them. And our existing teachers, our veteran teachers who have been teaching for 30 years, it provided them with enough resources that they were still going to be able to teach successfully. They also felt that these programs really offered the supports needed for all our learners, our accommodations for our ELL students, our ESE students, as well as our low learners, as well as extension and providing those extra things in there to help with our high learners and really meeting their needs as well. So ultimately, they felt really these were the best programs that fit the needs of the students and teachers of Lee County. So if you want to actually look through and enjoy all those reasons why, you may. But really, they really felt that those were the best programs for us. Our estimated cost for the science adoption is going to be $9,330,121.10. Now, this is all an estimate because it really depends on the enrollment in those different courses. So if we have a lot of students going into physics next year, of course, that price is going to, those materials are going to be more money, and it will kind of balance out. And then we do have our review site. It's open now on our district website. I actually posted this on September 30th. All of the ways for anybody, parents, community members, everybody to log in and review those materials. So that is open. The timeline is also posted as well. And then our next steps. So after today, actually tomorrow, I will be posting the public hearing notification, which will take place on April 8th at the school board action meeting. The school board adoption of science instructional materials will be on May 6th. And then the objection form will be posted on May 7th for anybody, and it'll be open for 30 days. And these are all aligned to state statutes, which is the process that we go through. All right. Thank you very much. Any questions, discussions?
Dr. Carlin.
Well, thank you to Dr. Shaker and his fabulous team for your presentation today. I also want to thank everybody that served on an adoption committee. I've done it before. It is an arduous task. It is time away from your children and away from your students. And so just thank you to all of our committee members as well for bringing forward your recommendations. I do want to highlight something that Ms. Spaber was speaking about, our instructional materials review site. We will make sure that that link gets out to our board members, and we'll make sure it's highlighted on our website. As Ms. Fleming referenced earlier, just coming off of the campaign trail, I noted that there are parents that definitely want to be very involved in curriculum. They want to understand what it is we're teaching children, and so this is a golden parent engagement opportunity to pop onto the site, take a look at the materials, and please give us your feedback. We look forward to that. So with that, I will turn it over to you for your discussion.
Mr. Persons.
Now, these materials will be good for how many years?
The normal adoption is 5 years. Sometimes because the state has changed their timeline, we've had to gap year and extend out those adoptions, but as of now, it's 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, 2 questions. How many teachers serve on these committees, and is there a level that you have more action or more willingness to serve?
We asked 1 teacher per school to participate. High school was a little difficult because of the actual programs. Not every school offers physics, and not every school offers space science. So we did have smaller committees for those, but for our elementary, we had, I think, almost every single elementary school participated. Same thing with the middle school as well.
We don't cap how many teachers can serve on a committee, do we?
We typically, we ask 1 teacher because we don't want lots of teachers being pulled out of classrooms. So we ask for 1 representative from each school. We also ask for, we happy to accept administrators to come and sit as an administrator on the committees as well.
I just want to make sure this is happening during instructional time, just for the public to understand. My other question is, how do we go about ordering just enough materials without extra. So for example, I'm sorry to ask this question, but you'll walk into a classroom and there'll be sometimes 20 workbooks that were never touched. So how do we save money in that? How do we allocate and kind of have it sort of an estimate without wasting too many dollars?
And that's the struggle that we keep trying to work through. But basically, we order by, we'll do initial orders on capacity. So if the school is saying that they're going to need 150 elementary, middle, or elementary third grade books, that's the number that we're going to order for. Sometimes that comes a little over, sometimes it comes a little under, and we're trying to do a better job of shifting materials to different schools so that we can have that cost savings. We're not constantly ordering more books, and that we can, typically that's what ends up happening. We end up shifting the materials at the end of the school year or at the beginning of the school year, knowing that, all right, well, we sent you 150, J. Colon English only needed 125, so we need you to move those 25 books over. And so that's what we work on. And then in the substantial years, we do reorders. So we'll look at inventory at the schools, and if you have, say, 25 books sitting there, and you're not going to need, we won't order you those 25 books. So we work with the schools to get a good, accurate inventory to help us with those costs.
So I know that in these kits, these curriculum kits, let's say per student, each student gets a textbook, a workbook, an intervention book, and maybe some other supplement that the company will add on. How do you decide, or who do you talk to? Do you take a survey? Do we ask principals? Let's say they realize these intervention books they weren't really doing the job we wanted them to do, so we're going to backpedal and only order textbook and workbook. Is there some flexibility there? Or?
There is,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely. We don't always order. And that's great about working with Florida School Book Depository in ordering those books, is we do have that ability to do it a la carte or order the package and get everything together. And so a lot of times with middle school and high school, we'll do class sets to offset that cost. With elementary, we'll look and talk to, usually, we actually have that conversation with Dr. Shaker and Lori Houchin and the specific content area coordinator, and we really look at what is it do we actually need, what is it that the teachers need, and we try to balance that with cost savings as opposed to what is actually going to be utilized in the classroom.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? All right, thank you so much for
Thank
putting
you.
this together. We're going to welcome Angela Montemurado to the stage, I guess. We'll call it that this afternoon. Next, she's going to have job descriptions.
Good afternoon, board members, Superintendent Carlin, Attorney Dupree Bruno. Before you received, I believe it is 4 job descriptions. I'm sorry, 5. We have the school behavioral contact was a supplement for your review, coordinator, government compliance and investigations, a revision to engineer broadcast communications, a revision to the chief operations officer, and a revision to the manager of safety and security for the zone. At this time, I will open it if you have any questions.
Dr. Carlin, do you have anything?
I do not. Just thank you for presenting, and we look forward to your conversation today.
Board members, any comments or questions about job descriptions? None today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next is our construction change order report and our bi-monthly update of March 2025 with Scott Rickenbacker and Kiara Sostak.
Good afternoon, board members. Superintendent Carlin, Esquire DePuy Bruno. You got a double shot Tuesday, you get a minor change order report, and then you get your 2-month update. Mr. Parsons, if I may, Superintendent, I'd like to take this opportunity. You are very big on the direct material purchasing tax savings we get. This is the brains that performs that. She's filling in, Melissa's on vacation. So this young lady carries all the weight. She does all the heavy lifting with the paperwork, so it's her magic, not mine. So let's start out on the change order report for January 2025. You'll see it's a quiet month. We only had non-direct material purchases in the amount of $36,072.40. The secondary backup sheet, you will see that the Johnson Engineering, we engaged in a $17,455 change order. That's where we're revising the Lehigh Senior area where we're going to put a staging campus for the next M and N elementary schools. We're shifting, we're paying to move the facilities that were taken from them years ago further in coordination with the principal and her staff. So that's underway. They're doing the design work. You'll see that we have 4 time extensions that we granted to our vendors. Pine Island Elementary sanitary sewer, that was due to some rain delays that we had during the project. And the toilets are all functioning. We're almost complete, but we're still going through punch list and getting them done. Tortuga Preserve, we had to add a boundary survey. We did not have a boundary survey, so that added some time. We had to give to the civil engineer to create the boundary survey to finish his work. Villas Elementary School parent drop-off, the drawings aren't complete. They needed a little extra time to get it done. In our contractual settings, we only gave them 3 months, and it was a pretty involved project, so we allowed them at no dollar cost to have a little more time to get the drawings accurate. And Cape Coral Technical College expansion, we added a little additional time to that design. As you're aware, we had been out of budget, and we went through the project and did value engineering and changed many things to get back into the board-approved capital budget, and they needed a little more time to put those changes onto the blueprint so that they can go out to bid. And that's the change order report. Any questions?
Board members, any questions on this part of the presentation? Okay, proceed.
Okay, and I'll just give you a heads up. Next February, when you get your change order report, we're returning on Franklin Park $7.5 million in overall project savings. So that'll be coming out next month. So the first slide we have, this is Bayshore, the K-8 expansion. I'm not going to go through every slide. You guys have it, but I'll give you the highlights that have changed from when it was issued to you, because we have a lot here. On February 17th, we did receive the 60% estimate from the architect of $39 million, and the construction manager was due March 4th, and we got it yesterday, of $43.6 million. So we're within the board-approved budget. We're within that range at the 60% estimate. And again, these numbers will get tighter and tighter as we get closer to the 100% and we put it out for public bid. So we're right on track. Any questions with Bayshore? Okay, next slide, please. BBBB, quadruple B, otherwise known as another school. 60% design estimates were due May 13th. We actually have them earlier. We have architect's estimate in the amount of $110,352,971, and we have a CM 60% estimate of $110,296,925. They're pretty close, but that's telling me maybe people are picking up the phone and talking, but that's okay. It gives us a good indication of where the number is. We're well within what our construction budget is, and when you add all of our things, FF&E on that, we're still within your $128 million budget in the capital plan. We do have some minor changes that at the request of the superintendent's office, looking how to maximize and reduce student station costs. So we've been working with Dr. Shaker. We've been working with the design team, we've been working with planning, and we have found some of those numbers, and I believe if Adam hasn't already presented to you, Dr. Collins, you'll be pleasantly surprised we were able to do that. So there will be some minor adjustments made to that, but we think we can accommodate that look. Next slide, please. Bonita Springs Elementary rebuild. Right now, we have, tonight, actually, you folks will be approving an addition to the Phase 1 cost, because we're not at this moment in time ready to go out for Phase 2 bidding. So we're asking for an increase of $1.5 million, which will cover the demolition of the historic buildings, but also provide for, in the historic building, you have your MDF and you have your electrical switchgear rooms. So we have to create a trailer out there, literally a container, where we'll store the electrical power and the MDF so that we keep the lifeblood of the school running, and then we are free and clear, and it keeps us on schedule to start the rebuild for the rest of the school. So that's the ask, and that'll be coming to you tonight. And the drawings, hopefully, once they're completed, we'll be able to put that out for bidding and bring back to you what an estimated total project cost will be as we're moving through that design phase. Any questions on Bonita Springs? Okay, excellent. Cape Coral Technical College, we spoke a little bit about that. The GMP was received on 2/28/25, and it will be coming to you on the April board meeting. So we'll be bringing the total project cost to you for the Cape Tech project. And we're under budget. We're maintaining the board-approved capital plan, so you'll see that next month. Any questions? While we're on it, if you haven't driven down Santa Barbara Boulevard, we are demolishing the old building. It's coming down. Don't drive in there with your personal cars. You're going to get nails. Next slide, please. Cypress Lake Middle School rebuild. We are out there now. We did receive the GMP. The GMP from the contractor was a little over $78 million. The total project cost, which on that project will be coming to you tonight as well, is $100,599,777. That represents roughly a $19.5 million savings from the capital plan budget. A lot of that is we're realizing some really good pricing. We've been very good in the VE, and we're getting some good numbers now. So the market is somewhat stabilizing. So you'll be seeing that tonight. So there's some money that in the capital plan can help with our situation. Any questions? Hector Caffaretta Jr. K-8 rebuild is underway. They're working with the city of Cape Coral. The Southwest Florida Water Management has been in communication with our civil engineer, and we're on track and on schedule to get that going for a substantial completion of August 1st of 2026. We have filed with the Army Corps as we have to. We're doing a no permit required. We don't anticipate disturbing the small pocket of little wetlands on that site, and it looks like we might be able to get a release and get a start in time. And we do possibly proceeding at risk, where we take every effort to ensure we don't go into that small. It's not a quality wetland. We don't go in there and disturb it, and we do our work and move forward. So we're well on the way with that school. Any questions?
Mr. Rickenbacker, thank you. As I ask every 2 months, when are we looking to have the shovel in the ground there?
Okay. If you go to the last page that you can't read with the 50 projects we did.
Yes, sir.
I bring it all with me because I know it's coming. All right. We are looking to put a shovel in the ground April 3rd. And that date is still holding. We expect some really good news from South Florida Water Management. That'll help us. The Cape Coral staff has been working really well with our design team that's doing the PPP project out there. So if that changes, I'll certainly alert the front office immediately, but that's our target date.
Thank you.
And I know they're hard to read, but we update this every month, so you're getting real-time information when you see these. Where was it? Next school, Elementary L, East Zone. We received a request from this designer to move the 90% design estimates for both the architect to March 17th. This particular designer, and it didn't impact the substantial completion or the contractual obligations, because obviously that school isn't due until many, many years from now, 28. That particular designer has been overloaded. We've fed that designer a lot of work. They're involved in a lot of our projects. So to give the person an extra month to produce the drawings, I felt was fair and reasonable. So, any questions? Okay, and remember too, L is on that combo site, L and OO. We're sitting in that spin with the Army Corps of Engineers, so it's not delaying anything, and it allows them to complete the drawings, if that explained it. Next slide. Elementary M. We just received our architect's 60% estimates. Architect is estimating $67,002,710. The construction manager is estimating $75,774,078. So we've got a little bit of this of a break there, which is normal. The CM is obviously going to put allowances and padding for unknown conditions and design. As we get closer to 90%, again, as I always tell you, that number will tighten up. And as you can see, the budgeted amount in the capital plan is $100 million at that moment in time. So even if the CM number stays at the 75, when you add our FF&E, which typically is about another 15 to 20%, we're right in that sweet spot. Not just FF&E, there's a whole bunch of things involved in there, but that portion. Any questions?
And I'm sure you've answered this before. The other day we had the senator out of Franklin Park, and he said, I love the design of the school, it looks great. Why can't we not just take this design and put it somewhere else? Because we own the designs.
You absolutely can.
So are we looking, and that saves us money too, correct?
There's a savings in the design cost, assuming that the contract that was written for that, I'd have to go back and look at it, has a provision for a reuse fee within the contract. Franklin Parks was kind of a one-off special school simply because of all the community programs and things that were going to occur within that campus. We certainly can look at the contract, but we've already engaged, and it doesn't mean we can't go a different direction, but we've already done an RFQ. At this moment in time, with a different administration, it was chosen to come up with a designer that could bring a fresh look to the district, yet while incorporating our prototype into it, if that makes sense. So the train's already left the station. It doesn't mean that we can't call it back and do things, but I think that's outside of this conversation at the dais.
Well, thank you. And not necessarily Franklin Park, but just in general, using the same design over instead of returning and trying to get them to give us new designs and paying for new designs when we already have them.
That is correct, and SREF actually recommends that you reuse your prototype if it was built within 3 years of your next build. Okay, next slide. We're almost there. Hang with me. High school NNN. We did receive the drawings on 3-3. We're in that holding pattern with the Army Corps, but I do have some good news, and the superintendent, I'm sure, will brief you in a separate one-on-ones. But we received notice that the Army Corps is going to be out to do a site walk this Friday, and that's critical in my world. They've already approved all the off-site permitting design comments for the utilities that have to be brought to the site. And they feel very comfortable with the on-site. Again, we're doing a no permit required on this. We're not disturbing the wetlands on-site. They want to come out to validate that what information we presented in terms of boundaries of wetlands is true and in fact what they visually see out there. And if it is and holds true, they feel confident that they can release the letter recommending a no permit required and possibly give us a permit by November of 2025. Now that's a full year in advance, and we can have those conversations with the superintendent and her staff as to whether we kick it in high gear and we try to bring on those seats in that desperately needed east zone. Any questions? Next slide. Middle school, I told you about that we are impacting the wetlands. We have a permit, we've applied. Both that school and LL We're doing some roadways between the property, working with Lee County DOT on that whole interchange process that's happening out there. Have a really good collaboration. All of that heavy lifting's already been done, so we're sitting in a holding pattern waiting on this. With the engagement of our legislative staff that you all have brought on board, communicating with people in the legislature and in the upper ranks of Florida, we're hoping that they can help push that project along too, again, for those needed seats for elementary and middle. Any questions? Okay. Riverdale High School. I'm not sure if any of you all, I know the superintendent has been out there. Job is progressing. We're still on target. They've got a beautiful gym going on, a beautiful science building, and the interior is being transformed and updated, and we continue to work forward. I mentioned to you that we had to do some underground sewer unforeseen. We're still at about $400,000. Any more coming?
Shouldn't be.
Okay. So we're holding that, and that's being done through the project contingency. So again, the reason why I haven't had to come back and ask for an increase on that. Any questions? VPAA and a Lemuel Teal. We're underway. We're about halfway complete. I know some of you have been out to see the black box. It's a beautiful facility. We're still finishing up and doing the roof and all the exterior work to seal up Lemuel Teal from the moisture infiltration it's had over the years. And we're doing the work upgrading the VP Veterans Park Academy of the Arts campus as well. So that project is continuing. Any questions? And you have the voluminous sheet of all the projects that we do every month updated. Were there any questions on the 2 sheets of the projects that my department puts through? Okay, thank you very much. You guys have a great day. Good job, Melanie.
Next is the outcomes for communications. Irma Lancaster, Rob Spicker, and Jen Robinson will be presenting.
Good afternoon, School Board, Superintendent Dr. Denise Carlin, and Attorney Dupuy Bruno. It's a pleasure to be here once again to present on the communications outcomes. I'm Irma Lancaster, Director of Communications. Joining me is Rob Spicker, Assistant Director, and Jen Robinson, Coordinator for Community Engagement. I believe we may have some team members on the back. Our Public Records Manager, Gigi Richard. Walking in the door, Laura Howard, our Digital Media Coordinator, and Annette Puckett, our Department Secretary. Part of our team also is made up, as you know, by our behind-the-scenes team, a Coordinator of Multimedia Communications, Adam Wright, and the Multimedia Specialist, and our interns. And then we also have our switchboard operators in the back, busy answering phones. Our agenda for this presentation is as follows. We'll provide a brief overview of the Communications Department and the services we provide. We will share our latest KPI outcomes and proceed to share the latest analytics from our digital platforms and media relations. This will be followed by a brief overview of some of the department's internal and external engagement efforts, and we'll wrap up with next steps and open it up for questions. Here's an overview of some of the services provided by the School District Communications Office. We use the school messenger platform to communicate directly with families via email, text, and phone calls. We use our digital platforms and our media partners for communication with all stakeholders. We create and execute marketing campaigns and advertise as funds allow. We support departments and schools with messaging, graphic design, social media, and many other services. We are out in the community collaborating with many organizations and events. We manage all public records made to the district, and our office also manages the switchboard for the main line to the district. I mentioned that we do marketing and advertising when there are funds available. We are currently running ads for the teacher recruitment campaign, which includes broadcast TV, radio, and digital placements, community newsletter, search engine optimization, and a unique campaign-specific website. You may have heard it in some advertising, is teachlee.net. We're also currently running a campaign for early childhood through grant funds. This includes broadcast TV, radio, and social media placements. We recently also did a full-page website takeover with Gulf Coast News that resulted in 220,000 impressions with a 25% click rate. We recently also heard from Dr. Quisenberry, who stated that slots were filling up very quickly. And we're going to show you examples of 2 of those spots running right now.
I want to become a teacher to have a positive influence on students' lives.
I want to become a teacher because I want to lead our future. I want to be a teacher because helping students grow into adults that are happy with their lives and happy with their careers is so important.
I found that passion is the most important thing in teaching, and I think I'm filled with passion and I'm ready to be in the classroom.
If you're ready to start your journey as a classroom teacher, apply today at teachlee.net because their future starts with you. Every great future starts with a strong foundation. At the School District of Lee County's Early Childhood Learning Centers, we nurture young minds with engaging, hands-on learning in a safe and supportive environment. Our certified teachers inspire creativity, curiosity, and confidence, preparing your little one for kindergarten and beyond. Give your child the best start. Enroll today and watch them thrive. Visit eclc.leeschools.net to learn more.
Thank you, Adam. And again, we are able to do this when there are funds available, mostly through grant funding. The specific objective our office supports as part of the strategic plan is Objective 9, to increase family engagement and partnership. Our measurable outcome is done via survey by measuring if families report positive responses towards the district approach to communications. It's important to note that this presentation and this survey data is strictly for communication that comes from the district office. Examples of that information include emergency notifications, closures, district-wide surveys and initiatives, and school board and superintendent events and messaging. Examples of messages sent by schools include attendance, school events, and lockouts and secures. We see that when we ask about the district communications, our responses have held steady at around the 80% mark. However, we continue to work towards improving that goal. Here's more of a breakdown of the respondents. We take the total from the strongly agree and agree for our annual percentage outcome. For the survey, we sent 3 different messages to families via text and email asking for their feedback. Here are some of the comments in the survey as they relate to district communications. We pull those that have to do with the district and are pleased with positive outcomes that we have received. One thing of note in the comment section in our survey is that respondents are not always as satisfied with school-based communication. We are working through those comments and plan for additional support for schools. Now I will turn it over to Rob to review some of our online and media relations analytics.
So if you take a look at a little more of the analytics we have for you, a lot of information on this slide, so I'll just hit some of the highlights of it. School messenger emails are our most common communication tool, so that boosts their number higher. Texts are usually reserved for items of high importance, so they're not as high, and phone calls primarily from us for emergencies. Well, the platform does provide us with an automatic delivery rate. What it does not give us is an open rate, so we don't have anywhere delivered. In addition, we've provided you with a unique number of views there for our website, and we highlight the 3 sites or 3 pages that get the most traffic. This slide shows our social media analytics. Our Facebook reach continues to hold steady at averaging about 1 million people over the past 3 years. X has decreased some. We're no longer able to track our reach without a subscription, so we are looking into that. We're seeing most of our growth currently on Instagram. We do believe that's due to an increase in our reels and our videos, as we know that's a more consumable piece of content for a younger age group. Our top YouTube video is the Open Gate informational video. Our top posts on Instagram and Facebook were related to storm closures, which leads us to our most popular video of the year, and that was the sorting ceremony at Bayshore Elementary. Take a look.
Not only do we teach at our school, what we do is we invite educators to come. Every week we have a national conference where teachers from all over the world, from China, Finland, Russia, India, all 50 states, they come to our school on Thursday and Friday.
So I know some of you were there and had fun at that ceremony. That's an example of a reel with the music and the text on the screen, a little different than maybe your traditional video, a story that you might see. That is what our younger audience likes, and they also get better traction on Facebook and Instagram, so that's why we've been using those of late. So I just want to give you a quick look at a little more context of our social media metrics. And what we're seeing here is how our social media presence compares to our neighboring districts and as well two of the largest ones in the country. We produce significantly more content and have significantly more subscribers on YouTube than any of those. On Facebook, we double the followers of one of our local counties and have almost 7 times more than the other. And we also outpace Los Angeles, and we're just behind Miami-Dade in the number of followers on Facebook. Now, involving our local media in highlighting our schools, students, and staff, that's an ongoing effort out of our office. That kind of trust and engagement we can build are critical when the news is not so good. What I want to call your attention to on this slide, though, is that trend in negative stories that are posted online. And I went ahead and added the first semester of this school year data we were able to collect. And what you see there, down to 8 negative stories, which equals less than 1% of our entire first semester coverage.
Thank you, Rob. As we move into engagement, I wanted to provide an update on the use of Thought Exchange, since this was something that was approved by the school board last year. The tool has some great analysis features that were used when we initially gained access to the software, specifically with communication from the schools and principals. What we have noticed, and you can see from some of the information on the slide, is that the platform is not yet mainstream enough for our external stakeholders, and we have actually seen a decline in external respondent numbers when compared to when we have used SurveyMonkey. Additionally, we have noted that the use of Thought Exchange is very low internally. We are currently evaluating this platform in addition to our SurveyMonkey account as we move forward with supporting the district priorities and being fiscally responsible. Now I will turn it over to Ms. Robinson to talk a little bit more about our engagement efforts.
Good afternoon. Community resource sharing and collaboration takes many forms and may include participation in reoccurring councils, committees, community meetings, and events such as the Haitian Creole Fair, Youth Commission of Southwest Florida, the Bonita Springs Community Resource Event, Community Proximity Plan Outreach, the Multicultural Center of Southwest Florida Big Backpack Event, and the Dia de los Reyes Festival. Community engagement partners with community organizations and groups, district departments, and schools to engage with the community, sharing essential district information and resources tailored to each outreach effort. Some examples of our engagement efforts include Parent University, which hosted 5 sessions across the county. Each session provided an opportunity to connect families with district-specific information and resources. Various community organizations also participated, including organizations such as the American Heart Association and Cape Coral Parks and Recreation, sharing valuable information with families. Our town halls, held throughout the zones in our community, allowed community members to engage directly with the superintendent, learn about district priorities, and ask questions. Through partnerships with schools and community events, our engagement efforts ensure that resources, information, and initiatives are accessible to families. Additionally, by collaborating with organizations and businesses on resource development, we work to support our schools and district with tools and opportunities. Ultimately, our engagement effort spans many areas, all to equip families and stakeholders with information, raise awareness, and foster support for district initiatives. Our community partners play an important role in supporting our students and families. Some examples include organizations such as the YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, New Horizons of Southwest Florida, and Lee County Parks and Recreation, which offer programming through before and after school programs and summer programming at some of our schools as we work together to support the needs of our community. Strong relationships are the foundation of meaningful community engagement. By fostering trust, collaboration, and shared responsibility, we create lasting partnerships that directly impact our students, families, and schools. Community engagement plays a vital role in coordinating and supporting district-wide campaigns alongside our partnering agencies. With our United Way campaign last year, our collective contributions raised $80,000, directly supporting programs that benefit our students, staff, and families. As the largest participating organization in the area for the Salvation Army, last year we adopted over 260 angels, ensuring local youth received gifts and essentials during the holidays. Another example is our partnership with the City of Fort Myers, which enables local movie nights in the park, often with a nonprofit organization spotlight, sharing programming, resources, and support available to the families in our community. Additionally, internal employee engagement through events, fundraisers, and activities are designed to boost morale, foster teamwork, and strengthen our workplace culture. Collaboration with local organizations to enhance and promote student success included some highlights, like the First Horizons Financial Literacy Program for 5th graders at some of our elementary schools. The Champions for Health event brought together Olympians from across the country through the City of Fort Myers, aimed at reaching out to area high school students on the importance of self-determination, goal setting, working hard, and maintaining a school-sport balance. And the Greater Fort Myers Chamber of Commerce Leadership Education Day connected community leaders with education. The Pine Manor Community Back to School event drew together over 200 Pine Manor residents. Each child received a free backpack and an opportunity to get a haircut, courtesy of the cosmetology and barbering students from Cape Coral Technical College. Educational and social service organizations were on site to provide information on programming as well as share resources with families. The Back to School Rush event was a collaborative effort between Lee Health, the Florida Department of Health, and various district departments to support new families in our community. Hosted at the district's central office, this event provided services such as physicals, health screenings, and student enrollment assistance. Families also had the opportunity to pick up school supplies, explore job openings within the district, and connect with local organizations for valuable resources. Several hundred families attended, with many expressing appreciation for the convenience of completing 2 student registration requirements in one place. The Future Makers Coalition 2nd grade volunteer reading program took place at Spring Creek Elementary and was a successful collaboration between the school district, Future Makers Coalition, Spring Creek Elementary, and several committed volunteers. In just 4 months, 520 volunteer hours were logged. Students participating in the program experienced an average increase of 55 words correct per minute, and the average student quarterly exemplar saw an increase from first quarter at 27% to third quarter at 68%. Students and volunteers reported enjoyment with the relationships and connections formed, with many students tackling previously avoided long reading passages with the courage to attend to the task.
Thank you, Jen. Our areas of focus moving forward: we will continue to provide communication support for the school district priorities. While our work supports all priorities, our department is focused on strengthening student, family, and community partnerships, part of which includes our involvement in the Parent Engagement and Empowerment Task Force, led by Dr. Cupid McCoy, our Chief Strategy Officer. This group includes families and community members in partnership with key district staff. You'll hear more about all that in a future workshop. As communications professionals, accuracy is a must when we distribute information. Our current checks and balances include reviewing each other's work, However, recently we recognized that during very busy times, we have inadvertently put out information with errors, and we understand that reflects on the district, the school board, and the superintendent. While our current review process has worked for years, as our workload demands change, we want to implement additional strategies to avoid errors in the future. We have implemented the use of a copy editing software and increased the use of our partners at Priority Marketing, and are also working on improving our internal communications processes. Next up, we will be collaborating on a more regular basis with our government relations team. The work they are doing is of utmost importance to the district, and our collaboration is essential when it comes to communication with our stakeholders. We also will continue to strive to produce award-winning work, such as our 2 International Marketing Awards and 2 Emmy Awards that we received this past year. And as always, we will make adjustments to our work as needed based on internal and external feedback. Thank you for your time in allowing us to share information on the work we do, and we'll now open it up to comments and questions from the superintendent and school board.
Thank you very much, Ms. Lancaster, and your team, and to all of your team for the work that you do each and every day. We really appreciate the very comprehensive presentation. So my personal favorite, as I look through it, all the engagement activities obviously are super important in our district. Love the videos, obviously regarding students who want to be teachers. I have been very vocal in our community about the need to get our teacher vacancies down to 0 because of the connection, the correlation to student achievement. So thank you for highlighting that. Always early childhood is a winner, especially at G. Weaver Hips. Lots of great things going on there, as well as our other early learning sites throughout the district. And of course, that sorting ceremony. I know a number of us have been through that at Bayshore Elementary, but that is always a highlight and really exciting just to see the culture that builds at that school. And go Imperium, I have to say it. The kids told me I had to I know, Mr. Persons, I'm looking at I'm looking at it, but the kids told me I had to be part of the team, so I have to take every opportunity I can. Okay, Miss Jordan, are you Imperium too? Okay. We're going to learn the chant. We're going to sing. We're going to say that at one of these meetings coming up. But all kidding aside, just great things going on, and really appreciate all your work in terms of engagement. So we'll turn it over to the board for your conversation. Look forward to your discussion and questions.
Mr. Ribble?
Yes, I just wanted to compliment you folks. I guess it was 2 new in activity because we just had it Friday with the ESOL, the 75 students that we had there. That was absolutely fantastic. And I know some of the council people that were invited that didn't show up, when they heard from their peers Friday and Saturday, they'll be there next year. It was fantastic. You talk about potential school teachers. I think we had a big group of those folks. They gave, I don't know how many stations they had, 12 or 15.
Yeah, I think it was about 15. I know our ESOL department.
The one on school, there was some, I didn't go to every one of them. Some were closer to home than others. But the one on school buses and school bus dispatch was outstanding. And then the other one on reacting to storms, storm prevention and disaster relief, that was outstanding. And to see those folks verbalize, somebody said to me, wow, they were really impressive. I said, yeah, I didn't talk like that till I was a junior in college. And these folks are 11th and 12th graders, so just an outstanding job. And I thought it was perfect. I couldn't even critique it.
Oh, thank you. Well, we were there to cover it. Yeah, this was an effort by our ESOL and government relations. Thank you.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have a couple questions and some comments. So looking back on page 8, kind of looking at the reach, we have a fairly sizable reach on X. I was just wondering why we don't have a subscription to that.
That's what we're currently looking into, the cost, and if we can budget in for next year.
Okay, awesome. The other one is, and I know you might not have the answer for this now, is how are we engaging with priority marketing? Like at what points are we utilizing, what services are we utilizing? So I know it's something we've kind of talked about before, so I just kind of wanted to see if we can get kind of a breakdown of how that happens.
So there's quite a bit. So one of the things they do on a regular basis, which is daily, is give us our media reporting. But we bring them in on strategic campaigns. So most recently, I would identify Bonita Springs Elementary was something that they helped us put a campaign on together. The first 100 days of the superintendent, they helped us on putting that together. So anytime it's something that is going to reach a lot of families, a lot of the public, we will reach out to them and coordinate our engagement efforts with their engagement efforts. When they do things, just them on their own, a lot of it has to do with we're not able to manage it on our own, such as the current teacher recruitment campaign that is really taking up a lot of time on coordinating all the media engagement. So they've taken that on directly on their own. Our marketing dollars that we are allotted are paying for that service. So we partnered with them by creating some of the content that you saw, but they are the ones that are actually managing the behind the scenes work, the placements of the videos and the online advertisements. So those are some examples of when we'll bring them in.
Going through this, just like I have other department outcomes, first of all, I appreciate all the team members. I know, as I said, you all appreciate what you do. A couple, as I said, there's many positives. I mean, community outreach and events, that's been fantastic. Parent outreach, even the success we've seen throughout the schools, thought exchange, I know that was Dr. Savage, I know really was able to utilize that. I know that's been a real positive feedback on it. Those school reels, things like those are awesome. So, but also there's things that we need to look at, and kind of this is also a board and a superintendent discussion. So I see obviously there's I talked about positive and negative stories, and that's great. But one of the things I think we need to do better as a district is being proactive. So one example I've kind of talked about before is Bonita Springs Elementary School. I think we need to do a better job of telling that community how amazing of what school they're going to get in the programs, or even the textbook review came up. I think that'd be fantastic if you could work with academic services, because I know a lot of my constituents, and I'm sure other constituents of my fellow board members talk about that. Let's let them get that information. So I think, things like that, or even, just really showing the community day in and day out what's going on in the schools. I know we have some of that, but for example, we're going to have a presentation soon, and many of us went out to the Alva School recently about seeing a lot of their FFA. I think it would be great to highlight things like those, so really show what's happening in our schools and happening in our district. So that's something I think would be really important on that. So, and the other thing, just a comment on parent communication. You guys are great. I know we have 2 other parents up here, got a lot, but the other thing I'd just like to notice with communications, and it applies to everyone generally, is maybe simplify some of the stuff, or at least, have a link to other stuff, because there's a lot that comes in, and that is great, and I hear that from parents, but the other feedback I get is, hey, it's very lengthy, there's a lot of volume, and sometimes that's great, but when you're getting hit with a lot of stuff, so that's just a comment, but thank you.
So this is my wheelhouse. I greatly appreciate all of the numbers and analytics, but to piggyback for slide 7, when we're looking at our school messenger, and specifically for 24, having a higher volume of students and parents and the percentage of emails being lower. I know you mentioned in your system you can't see what's been opened. You can see what's been delivered. So I'm curious with focus and messenger in those pieces, if we're seeing, do we get like a bounce back to see like maybe inaccurate emails maybe that aren't working? Do we get a report on that?
The report does, will tell you if it's been blocked. And a lot of time it's blocked on the user end, not on our end.
Right.
So their email address isn't accepting it. And that's not something we can fix because it's something in their inbox. So we do know if they're blocked. And I should point out the 2022 number is so high because that's Hurricane Ian.
Right.
And then you can see we sent everything always that year just because we weren't sure how people were going to receive it. So we're a little more stable in the following years because we had the other hurricanes come through as well. But so we can tell when they're blocked, but not necessarily much more beyond that.
Is it a white label issue where maybe they have to white label your email or approve that receiving email?
It's their spam, it's their filter,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there maybe something that we can put out to make sure that our parents are getting the communication, and maybe it's a process saying, hey, if you think you're missing communication and you signed up through Focus and you're getting, maybe you have to white label or approve our email or whatever the case may be, just so they're getting that communication, because to Mr. Fisher's point, I have Messenger, I use Focus, I get the text messages, and it is a lot during all the pieces. And I live in email. I prefer email because that's what I'm in all day, some prefer text. So I would say if there's a way to maybe walk them through that, I think that would be great. The other piece on slide 8, when we mention our partnership with Priority Marketing and not having a subscription, agencies like that have platforms that they use all the time. So is it possible, because we have a marketing agreement with them already, that we just ask them to leverage their tools for them to give us insights and reporting? So it's not something that an additional cost that we have to do. It's just maybe something as part of their package where, hey, can you provide us reporting and the software that I will 99.9% guarantee that they already have something that can track all of this for us.
Yeah, and that's how we do the daily media reports, is they have to have, as you know, a certain amount of clients that are willing to pay for the service in order for them to use it. So they use TVIs for our daily media, and so we're trying to see if we can slip this in as well, because it is easier. That's also how we manage our constant contact. That isn't something that's directly out of our office. We provide them the content through our services, and they pull the trigger because they're the ones that hold it. So absolutely, it is something that we're hopefully can add to the package as well.
Okay. And then one more thing on the marketing component too, as we look into the other channels and X and Instagram, you know, Facebook has stories and reels, so there's other ways to make sure that we're leveraging the content, just to make sure it's out in front with what we have out there and repurposing our content. So if there's something that they can assist with to kind of remap, reduplicate, kind of whatever it is for that size to kind of work smarter, not harder, I think it'd be great to leverage them to take some stuff off of your load since they're already there.
Yep, we absolutely will use them as much as possible. Yeah, they're a little costly, but yes, we will use them.
That's it.
Anyone else? Ms. Jordan?
I just want to say thank you very much, all of you. I see you everywhere. I'm out there everywhere. You're everywhere. And I really appreciate what you do. And I know we always come back and we talk about how we tell our story. And as the years progress, we are getting much better at telling who we are and telling our story. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the presentation and putting all the time into this. I will agree with Mr. Fisher about the proactivity, you know, kind of, it doesn't necessarily have to be negative, but just to be transparent and informative to families. It might not even be necessarily, I mean, how great is the Bayshore event? We have so many of those in the school. But what I've noticed is there are some schools that aren't as highlighted as often as others. So do you all reach out to, let's say, principal at X school and say, we really want to highlight your school? It might be, you know, especially some of the schools that, you know, are in some zones that I think you understand what I'm getting at. But just to highlight the great things that are happening at those schools that aren't necessarily headliners. Does that make sense? How do you go about that?
So actually, I think it was last year, maybe the year before, we started a tracking spreadsheet, because a lot of what the schools do also is based on how much they can promote it. So we have schools that are constantly sending us information, and those schools are typically the same schools that you see are very active on social media. The others, and it's not because they don't want to, it's just, you know, staffing is different at the different locations. So as we get closer to the end of the year, well, like halfway through the year, we'll start looking, what schools have we missed? Because of course, as you know, we do the big state of our schools at the end of the school year, and we want to make sure that we're not always highlighting the same schools, especially in that setting. And we've also provided a presentation during the principals meeting, how to tell their story, how to tell us what, you know, what they're doing and how we can support. And going back to some of those engaging more internally, I know Mr. Fisher and you're also mentioning, that's what we're really working on. We continue to work on here at the district office as well as with schools. How do we find out what you're doing? Because we, you know, you're out, the superintendent's out. Schools are excited when you get there to tell you everything that they're doing. You come back, you tell us something you saw. Why didn't we do anything about it, but we don't always know. And again, it has nothing to do with they don't want to tell us. It's just they don't have the time. So we're working through trying to improve that communication so that we're aware of things. Same thing with being proactive. Sometimes, we may not see it until it comes to the board or it's already out and that's when we find out about it. So we're trying to improve internally here at the district too, what is happening so that we can be prepared for that as well. So we appreciate your comments on that. Thank you.
Do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just thought of something where,
Sure.
I know the high schools, when they have their academies and all those pieces, there's marketing academies, right? There's a marketing academy at some of them. Is it a possibility or a way, because I mean, they need volunteer hours, they need things to do. Is it a way that maybe they can get with a school that's near them or kind of adopt an elementary or middle school and kind of almost like take on a project or do something to help support those activities where they're capturing that content for them? It's helping them get their hours, learn the platforms and get familiar, but then also help showcase the schools and what they have going on. So maybe a 2-for-1.
That's a great idea. I think we can get with our CTE folks and ask about that. We do also have currently 3 in-house student interns. Of course, their principal thing is to go to school.
Right.
So their hours here are limited. So the product, what they produce is very limited. But it also helps us with content, and it also helps us with ideas. For example, I know you started to be involved with Zello. We're currently working on developing all those collaterals, and we use them especially when it comes to targeting students. We might think something, we show it to them, and they're like, no, I'm not going to pay attention to that. So we are actively using
Or can we
students.
do a call to like an FSW or an FGCU that has those programs to say,
yeah, sure,
here's an internship opportunity?
Yeah, we partner with universities as well, but we're limited as how many we can. So I like your other idea because I think it might be easier to facilitate. So hopefully if CT folks aren't listening, they will be after this and we'll be reaching out. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Have a great afternoon. We're going to move on. Dr. Savage is going to be presenting information about our board advisory committees.
Good afternoon, board members and Superintendent Carlin and Attorney Dupuy-Bruno. Happy to be up here with you today. So this is actually part of a planned board discussion to come back to the board member liaison committee assignment list. This is the second opportunity for you all to have some more discussion today about some of the recommendations that we have made. Obviously, some of them are reflected in policy, so we want to give ample opportunity for you all to discuss. That gives clear guidance to your attorney as well for revisions to policies as needed based on that guidance, as well as just specific considerations of specific members serving in certain capacities. Before we open up that conversation, just want to kind of reiterate again the structure. Sometimes it helps to just remember what we're talking about when we talk about these committees. So as you can see here on the sheet that you all have that we've used over the years to try to guide this, the top group, we've tried to group these committees in this area. And so the very top group is really set aside for committees that were to act in a board advisory function where their whole purpose was pursuant to the different policies to provide advisement at the board's direction. And so the ones that were prior included in that were construction, strategic plan accountability, curriculum, district advisory, equity and diversity advisory, finance advisory, as well as the audit committee, which has its own specific policy function as well. But all of them essentially function in a similar capacity, which is they are there for you. As you remember back in the January meeting, our recommendation was to take some of these committees that had very specific interest and a lot of struggle to retain membership, and had a lot of duplication of membership. So a lot of the same folks are applying for those different committees to try to broaden your reach and to be more representative of the entire district. There was a recommendation to move these under the DAC structure. And again, one of the clarifications we had from the last meeting was that they would not meet at the same moment, but that would be comprised of that membership. Because as you may recall, the DAC is comprised of SAC membership, which are school advisory councils, which statutorily have different components. They have to be filled by different types of positional diversity, as well as through the ethnic and racial diversity that is captured in statute, so that you ensure you have some level of membership that is commensurate with your student population served, and that's in statute for all of Florida. So that ensures some level of that difference of perspective. Furthermore, because all schools have it, you have a balance of secondary schools, elementary schools. Within that SAC advisory, you also have business folks, you have parents, you have support staff, you have teachers, you have administrators. So you really get a lot of divergent viewpoints in that group. Meanwhile, the board has contemplated, how do you get broader community input? How do you ensure that the type of engagement you're having is representative of the entire community and not just maybe the loudest voices within that community? And so a good example of that is in this communications presentation we just had. You know, a lot of what they're attempting to do is leverage technology and other means. So by no means is this the only way that you can listen to constituents. For example, folks are able to come to our board meetings. They are published, they are noticed in Sunshine. Folks are able to provide their comments on the record. There's an opportunity for folks to respond, things of that nature. Folks are also allowed to call you and email you, as many of them do. You're also out and about in the community and you have a chance to hear different perspectives, because ultimately it was the 7 elected board members that really are the representation of our voters speaking to our district and the leadership of our district. And you all are obligated to do that, and that's a big part of the enjoyment of your job, is getting to hear those different voices. Additionally, there's many engagements that we have as a district well beyond this. Now, those don't go directly to the board necessarily. Things such as ad hoc task forces, we can pull in various groups depending on what we need. A good example of that for over the years was student advisory. Student advisory was not a board advisory committee, but it was a group of students to try to make sure we were listening to students and hearing what their different vantage points are. Again, there are many other examples such as that. So I just wanted to kind of classify that first. The second area you have up there has to do with the Independent Sales Surtax Oversight Committee, and that again is not a board advisory per se. It really is a specific designed as part of the surtax. When we adopt that 10-year surtax, this was a requirement of transparency of a independent group that was monitoring that and then reporting their findings to this board, but it's different in the sense that they are governed really by the filing that allowed them to be created along with our surtax. The third group that you have here is related to specific groups that are quasi-governmental in the sense that they have a function, in our case, Head Start, Early Head Start Policy Council. That requires an institutional seat from this board as a function of being a recipient of the Head Start funds. So these are the kind of things that we have to have that type of engagement by participating in that federal program that then subsidizes a huge portion of our early learning programs. In addition to that, you have elements like the Value Adjustment Board or the School Health Advisory, which shows up in, and you see the statutory reference there, the authority that derives that committee is derived from, as well as the Horizon Council, which again, for those you all, most of you are aware, that is similar to an advisory for the county commissioners. And so we have an institutional seat on that as well for our chair, as well as our superintendent and that executive group. So again, this is a different group of committees, different functional purposes and so forth. So they're grouped, they're still part of your group, but they're grouped separately. Below that level, we have 2 that are specific to our bargaining effort, and that includes the instructional calendar as well as the insurance task force. These are 2 specific committees that have very specific operational functions, and as a result, the board members really are there to listen to those things. They don't really actively participate in that element because of ultimately bargain contracts come to you for a vote, but it allows you that ability as a board to have a presence of hearing it and then communicating things back and forth from your awareness point of what you have there. So again, it's a very unique but different, as you can see, from these other areas. That last group that we have there before we get to the highlighted areas, These are things that have been requested through other entities that may have some, whether they're nonprofits, some type of relationship with our district in some capacity, whether it's that they service our students by performing scholarships, whether it's that they're a nonprofit that has an educational purpose and has to have some formalized relationship with the district, or just someone that wants to have a deeper relationship with this entity. And so those, you'll see a number of things fall into that category. Some of them are nonprofits that in order to receive it are contingent upon having some type of relationship as well that's defined. And so you can see over the years, we've had lots of different, those folks, and you can see they're diverse as well. Last but not least, we have the new, this is a fairly newer idea for us here, is to actually have an institutional liaison, because with two so far of the educational entities. Now here's the bottom line. Just like in all these different things that are here, you're all able to engage in some capacity with these things. But for the matter of trying to organize a board and their way of work, there is a value in having a point of contact so it isn't 7 different folks. It's an opportunity to build and enhance some of those relationships on an individual basis. And then periodically they review if you want to revise who's serving those capacities. Maybe for a different perspective, maybe it's just to try to spread out the work. That's really at the board's discretion. So at the first meeting we had in January, we discussed, and Mr. Ribble had been requested to potentially sit as this liaison representative for Florida Gulf Coast University. And hence, since the time between that and now this, we've actually had a second request come in for Florida Southwestern, which is part of the discussion today for one of our state colleges here locally, that Mr. Persons was requested for that particular piece. Just similar to Mr. Ribble, there'd been some engagement to ask if he'd be willing to be a liaison connector. And here it is. At the end of the day, it's the board's discretion. That's why we introduce these things in the sunshine, so that you all can have the discussion that you'd like to have about what do you feel about that? How does that dovetail with some of the other committees? Is there clarity about that? It's just an opportunity for you all to have the type of discussion, because truly it is the board's will of what you'd like to do, both engaging with the community as well as engaging with other institutions. This is a huge part of the board function. So I stand ready to do my level best to answer questions you may have. The only other piece I just want to surface for you is all of the seats we had filled. There are a couple big changes from the last time. One was we had recommended initially to keep the Equity and Diversity Advisory as its own separate standing ad hoc committee, but at this time we would recommend that the DAC structure essentially replace all of those board advisories, so that any specific need that would have fallen under the purview of any of those specific prior committees would be you would be able to charge the DAC to be responsive to that need. So if it were a sake of a new school site selection and you wanted a group to come out, that you would charge the DAC, as you are able to do, that you would want them to engage in that. For example, they've been digging into the cell phones. They've been digging into the start times. They are there to advise you. And so you are able to tell them, this is what we want you to dig into. This is an area we'd really want a lot more feedback, and we want your input. And so that's an opportunity for you to launch them into any of those particular areas. And if you felt that the level of expertise you needed was very specific, such as maybe like an audit committee, then we have the ability to task the superintendent to form a task force for one of those cases. For example, strategic planning. You don't revise your strategic plan every year necessarily. You may advise it every 3 to 5 years. And so then when that time comes, you would charge the superintendent to convene that and so forth, and develop a cadence along those lines. So that's one piece. So just that big edit within the EDAC piece, I wanted to make sure I mentioned that because that was a change from the January recommendation. Of course, that was prior some of the executive orders. You're well aware that some of those things that we're trying to be responsive to those things. As a federal fund recipient, we're trying to be very proactive in that space to try to keep abreast of those things, but it's an evolving landscape. We continue to dig into that. And then the second piece that I wanted to draw your attention to was the question was, there were 2 particular committees that we did not fill seats for. We had staff engage with those 2 groups, which were Learning for Life, as well as the Uncommon Friends Governing Board. And the request, the information has been relayed to me, was that neither of them are needing to fill seats at this time. One is they're in for different reasons. They're in kind of different statuses. So there is no need to fill that at this time. Of course, if that changes, we'd bring that back to the board. So that said, as a matter of business, I just wanted to kind of highlight, first off, any opportunity to talk about anything that I've covered today as a collective group. Secondarily, just reactions to any of the DAC structure elements that we talked about, as well as the consideration of Mr. Persons serving in that FSW institutional seat as well as any other elements you may have. With that said, Madam Vice Chair, I'm happy to pass it back to you for the 10.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Jordan.
So, Dr. Savage, thank you for all of this again. So are we going to then just remove all the other committees that are currently on here and just have the one DAC, period? So it's like they don't exist.
Yeah, the recommendation is that you'll have 2 formal board advisories, where you used to have 7, you would now have 2. That the work of those other advisories would be folded into the DAC. There's the ability to generate an ad hoc subcommittee as needed. And so the same spirit could be done in a much more, includes a much larger membership, as well as the audit committee would retain its function as you have in policy presently.
Okay, so then they will just all go away?
They would
and
not
it'll
be
say
in the format
DAC?
they were in the past.
Okay,
That would
it'll just be removed.
accurate.
And then and speaking of DAC, we as a board and the superintendent, we need to decide or come up with what is it that we would like DAC to take on every meeting, or 1 or 2 meetings, because we have to give them directions on what we're looking for, or what are the needs of the district.
That's
So
correct.
that's something we have to make sure that we are doing that.
That's correct.
As before, where everybody had their own agenda and they were creating whatever they felt was the need for the committees.
Yeah,
So
I think
that is something we
it's
need
a
to
fair comment to make, and this is one of the issues that has been raised about the advisories in the past, was that there wasn't always an understanding of true lines of responsibility. What are the roles and responsibility? I know Attorney Dupuy Bruno had sent out a reminder of what the board liaison function actually is, and so again, that does, just to reiterate briefly what you said, that means the board really speaks as to what the priorities for that group should be, and that committee has the opportunity then to be responsive to that, but it isn't individual board members that say that. Individual board members are essentially the vehicle of communication back and forth between the will of the board and the advisement of that committee. And then that's I hope that's clarifying what you were just saying.
Yeah, so perhaps, maybe on our one-on-ones with the superintendent, we can speak about what items we might want to bring up and then bring it to the full board, have an agreement on that, and then we take that back to DAC. As far as, Mr. Bruno?
If I may,
Oh,
Madam Chair.
Go ahead,
So,
sorry.
okay. 9140 is the policy that controls.
Right.
And if you're talking about DAC, it's normally quarterly, where the superintendent will do an analysis, speaking with staff, speaking with board members during one-on-ones, and come up with a recommendation to bring to the board, for the board to say, this item I like, or this one I like, and then assigns it to the staff liaison for DAC to be able to discuss it. So that's the process that will be in your policy.
Okay. So I just want to make sure that we are doing that, we're following suit on that, whereas before, even though we had 9140 as the policy, which we will now have to go back and fix those as well, because we have a lot in that policy. But even though we had that in there, the committee still had their own agendas. So we still need to make sure that we are doing what we need to do
Absolutely correct.
going forward.
Absolutely correct, Ms. Jordan. That's why, that's one of the things that we worked on this year. I know that the superintendent has already brought forward a couple of thoughts in terms of DAC. It did go through the right process. It went to the board made the direction, and she went back and told the liaison. So for DAC, we're back on the right track the way it's supposed to be. So I foresee that's how we're going to be proceeding from now on.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we do, and then, especially because now I'm the liaison on that, and I just want to make sure that everyone does believe that they still have a voice and they can get involved in their schools to stay engaged with us. And then my other question would be, we now have the second university partner, it seems like, and these requests, where are these requests coming from? Nothing to do with anybody that's sitting up here, but I would just like to know where the requests are being made from.
I actually made the request. I've met with the president. I attended what was Edison back at that time, and I even coached their tennis team for a while, and I just thought, with our high school being located there and things, it might be nice to have someone from the board become a like a liaison with them, and maybe we could work even better. So sort of volunteered. And I had not thought of it until we did the FGCU one. And I thought, well, gee, that we have another university. And I would like to do it if the board would permit that.
Ms. Jordan, follow-up?
Yes. Thank you for sharing that, because I know when I asked about the request, it seemed like it was coming from the other side, and I had asked who was requesting this out there. I have no issue with that, with you being that. I just wanted to know, where are these requests coming from? Thank you.
Mr. Persons and Mr. Riddle?
It was a little bit, because I actually had a dinner with President Albritton of the, not the Senate president, but the college president. Two presidents with the same name. And I mentioned it way back then that, I'd really like to visit the college, and he wanted me to come out and show me everything, and then it sort of evolved from there. So we have sort of a mutual understanding. It wasn't an official request from them. Thank you. It's definitely from me. Thank you.
Mr. Riddle?
Yeah, I guess it's time to come forward and say who my recruiter was, if you will, and I know there's been some buzzing about it. So Wayne Smith is a benefactor of FGCU and serves on a lot of their committees over there. And I had been the liaison when I was a mayor in the village. In fact, I was liaison for 6 years. I also had 10 years experience when I retired from UPS as the president of advancement for Kutztown University. So I know a lot about running capital campaigns, and I was a person that recruited all our board members for the university along with the president. So I have a lot of experience in my bag besides being a retired UPS person. So that's why I was asked if I wanted to do it. Since then, I've been meeting pretty consistently, as the superintendent knows, with the dean of education over there. And you heard about what happened with the fundraiser that we had, raising the $95,000 through Engage Estero, and then the book giveaway where we gave over 1,400 all our students in Lee County books. So if someone would like to do that, I mean, they should make it known, but I had a strong desire to do it, and I was asked to do it, and that's how my name was put up. And if we're here for consensus, I would certainly give consensus to my peer, Armor Persons, with his interest in FSW. So I think he has the right position and the right posture for that. Thank you.
Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. I'm in agreement with what Dr. Savage has put up on the board. I think that's a really smart way of doing it. I'm also in agreement with Mr. Persons. The only thing I would note is just obviously as we're having things go through DAC right now, I know Ms. Jordan is on that committee, so I just want to make sure we have communication and also as well as from staff on that to see what's going on, as well as making sure that there's opportunity for observation too. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So I would like to just comment very quickly, as Mr. Bruno said, it is incumbent upon the superintendent, according to board policy, to bring forward a topic to be discussed by quarter. And so we will absolutely continue that process. And we gather input, like I said, from staff to find out what it is we need direction relative to, or we need some input. Now that we have collapsed our committees into the DAC, I agree with Ms. Jordan that it will be incumbent upon us to look at all aspects of our district and to see what it is we need, in terms of feedback. And so I'll be happy to continue to bring those quarterly topics to the board for your discussion. And if there are other items, we can absolutely talk about those in our one-on-one. So thank you.
Ms. Jordan, follow-up?
I just, based on what Mr. Fisher just said, anybody's welcome to come to that meeting. And I immediately, on any committee I've ever served on, when the next meeting, I will always give a report, always. So I just want to, and I will never stop doing that. I just want to clarify that.
I just wanted to remind the board, you had a conversation about strategic plan and how you could support the strategic plan by going out into the community with your different areas of interest and working with different community members, different organizations. So I just want to remind you that you are all able to do that, to go out into the community and find, an organization or something else that you would like to support and bring it back to the board, because you did have that conversation before.
All right, thank you. I just want to thank Mr. Persons and Mr. Ribble for taking upon that extra lift. I think that's wonderful to be the liaisons between the district, and many of our students attend these schools post-high school, so thank you both for doing that. All right, I think we have consensus that we can move forward with this. Okay.
And then I will adjust the board policy to reflect the board's will.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Savage.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair.
Next, we have a discussion that will be led by Mr. Fisher on the board auditor position.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. If possible, Chief Montemurano, could you join us up on the dais, just if we could have a couple questions, please? If that's all right. Thank you. So we're obviously, I had sent out a memo in regards to the board auditor. We had made the decision we want to hire a board auditor, and kind of just wanted to go through the process really quickly. We're currently, we have received applications. I sent that out. I also sent out kind of an update in the applications. The period ends, I believe it's March 12th, I think, for that, so that it runs out. So what I wanted to figure out is, I believe we're at about 5 applications right now, once they've done the checking, and that I know there's still a couple people that haven't yet responded that had applied more in the beginning. So going through it, and thank you, HR and Chief Montemurano. I appreciate your help on this. So what I kind of wanted to figure out with the rest of the board is what are we going to do next? So I'm just going to throw it out there. I'd suggest maybe if we keep the application time period open a little bit longer, maybe a few more weeks on that. And then going to the next part of the process would be we either have to set aside a time, an existing workshop, or a special meeting or something like that. And what that process would be at that point would, HR has already helped develop a rubric. Appreciate that. So we could get that rubric out. You'd review the resumes and then, or applications, excuse me, and then at either the workshop or a special meeting, then we could essentially go through and pick, however we want to, if it's top 3 or top 5, whatever we want to determine that time. Then at that point, we'd have another meeting where we would interview them essentially in public. We'd also have one-on-one interviews, I believe that's been done in the past for the board attorneys and the superintendent. So, and then, at a further meeting, if we had made a decision at that point, and if there was an applicant we felt comfortable moving forward, we'd then do that at a meeting. So my question to the board is, and please, if anyone wants to jump on this, we have a lot in our workshops. We're, one a month, so they're packed. So I don't know if it would be beneficial instead to essentially have 2 either special meetings or workshops in the next little bit, and carve out that time and then, focus on that process. So one workshop essentially to go through the rubric and where we're at to pick our top applicants, and then another one for interviewing the people. I just wanted to get some feedback on that, so.
Mr. Ribble?
Okay, yeah, this is the first we had a chance to talk about this. I got this packet and I spent some time in it. Then I spent some time yesterday with one of the HR folks. And we had, I don't know, about a dozen people apply, but now we're down to, you said 5. And what concerns me is we went through the motions back as far as July 10th, 24, and here we're into 2025, and we still haven't got the interview process going. So if we're going to interview people, and we're asking people to apply for a position, we need to be set up that we can react to their, they get to a lot of trouble that will apply, and then a lot of people get frustrated and they're looking for advancement in employment. It doesn't happen, it leaves a bad taste in their mouth. So I think to keep our reputation of excellence intact, we need to do a more professional job when we advertise positions and responding to the applicants. That's just my comment.
Follow up, Mr. Fisher.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Ribble. Unfortunately, we had two hurricanes come through that delayed. We were actually set for an interview process. On top of the prior board was trying to respect the new board by allowing you and Mrs. Chaviano to be able to take part of this, since it would end up being your guys' employee. So that was kind of that. And obviously we had a new board, new administration come in, so we had to work through some other stuff before we got to that point, but that point is well taken. So that's why I'm trying to advance this and get going on it now.
So if we're trying to go ahead and come with a conclusion that we walk away with, say, I'm in complete agreement that perhaps maybe a two-week window extension because of those applicants pulling their application, and then I'm for a workshop and followed up by a special meeting. Can I get a thumbs up or something on the dais for at least those two?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
And that's what I wanted to ask Chief Montemurano. Obviously, this has been up a while. Is there any way to, I don't know how to say this, highlight it maybe a little bit more so it gets out there over these next couple of weeks, just because it's maybe been stagnant, that it's been sitting out just because of how long it's been active?
Sure. There are different ways that we could do that, but my concern there would be, in order to bring something to the top, we'd have to close what we had and bring out a new one. That's a little tricky to do that, but on our Indeed, where we post it out and things like that, there might be a different opportunity that we might be able to bring that to the forefront. But I'd be a little concerned to go the other route. So in that, to answer that, unless you really want to start a new search, I don't recommend doing that.
Okay. So we've reached consensus on, is there a consensus on doing separate meetings? Is that as well, if need be? As I said, and I will work with everyone to make sure it's scheduled. The last question I had in regards to that, and if anyone else has any, because this is the time we get to talk.
I'm going to interrupt just for a minute
sorry.
because Ms. DuPay-Bruno
Thank
has her hand
you.
raised.
Just out of an abundance of caution based on prior experiences, I would request that all of these meetings be special meetings, not workshops. And that will protect you, give you the maximum protection for sunshine issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Attorney. Again, the other thing that we've kind of talked about, I've heard some feedback, is if we want anyone else in other areas of professional fields locally that are maybe auditors to contribute, whether it's the clerk of courts. I know some of the municipalities have their own city council or board auditors. I don't know if anyone has an appetite for that, if they want any feedback or anything like that. So.
If I can add to what Mr. Fisher said, there is some requests from the audit committee itself, and Ms. Giovanelli asked that I share this with you because she's the liaison to the audit committee. The first request was that they wanted their recommendations that they had drafted for the board auditor job description to be included. So I wanted to bring that up to you. And then the second request is that the audit committee would like the opportunity to actually participate in the interview process. So those are the two things they requested for the board's consideration.
Mr. Fisher?
So following up on that, we already have, and Mr. Persons probably remembers this, we already did kind of set, and again, it's up to everyone, we did set that job description. We already had received that feedback before. And the second thing is not necessarily in the interview process. I mean, anyone can give us feedback in regards to the interview process, so, or any applicants. That would just be my take on it. I'll leave it up to other people's thoughts up here.
Yeah.
I agree.
I'm in agreement with that. And I see nodding heads.
Yeah.
Okay.
Would we like to, as well as, we talked about the audit committee looking through stuff, just like anyone else, would we want to have any discussions, have staff reach out to anyone that's, to give some highlights or feedback?
Ms. Jordan?
I'm sorry, I thought we had talked about the audit committee possibly looking at this, because they are the experts. I mean, we have an audit committee that we put into place because of the fact of who they were. I am not an auditor, and I could not tell you which person would be the best. I mean, we can interview and speak to people, and you can read a resume, but a resume is, to me, is paper. It's what's on the paper. As far as their ability, I would not know if it was good, bad, indifference, because that's not my forte. Maybe Mr. Ribbles, because he's done a lot of different things. But for myself, I would not know a good auditor. So I think that we should include the audit committee in some respect.
Mr. Fisher?
Yeah, and that's why I mentioned perhaps reaching out to some of the government local auditors, maybe to get some feedback from them. I'm always happy to get feedback from the auditors. I don't think, as I said, they can review the interview process the same as us. They can look up the same documents as anyone in public. So I know we had kind of previously addressed that, but my thing was seeing if we could get, it's no different than a board attorney. Not all of us are attorneys up here when we're hiring somebody else. So, but that's why I said maybe get some auditors in place that are in government, maybe just to see if they give any feedback as well. I'm asking everyone for feedback, but we have any other thoughts, suggestions?
Mr. Persons?
This is going to be our employee, so we have to make the decision. I would not want the audit committee to have any decision-making powers at all. Feedback, I think, is good. Again, I'm not real sure how we share. I don't know if the applications are even public. Many times they're not, so that becomes an issue. We can all agree not to put that out, but you start putting it out to a committee, and all of a sudden someone's calling their employer and say, hey, do you know your CPA is looking for another job, and that becomes very sticky. So as far as what we're looking for, I would like feedback. They made a recommendation and we made changes, but not all the changes they wanted to the job description, but we went through line by line with them. And I think we settled on that. So just not decision-making and not letting the audit committee know who we're interviewing until it's time. I think it's, now would the interviews be done in a special meeting in public? Because
Attorney DePay Bruno, you want to answer that?
Yeah, just like the superintendent was when they, okay.
Exactly. So normally what would happen is the board would be provided with the various resumes. You would go ahead and select your rubric. I would again ask that it be done in a special meeting so there's no confusion as to whether or not you're voting or not voting. And then you would take your top 3, your top 5, whatever the board decides, and then set up the first interview. The first interview generally is in public with all 7 board members to ask the various questions, and then you will have an opportunity to have a one-on-one, and then you come back together as a group to make your decision.
Mr. Ribble?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I think we're getting downstream too far. At first, we have to have a meeting amongst ourselves to decide who we want to interview out of this group. Because some of these people, they said they're interested, they're not qualified. I'll tell you that right up front from having experience in doing this. So we need to agree that we're going to talk to, these 2 or 3 or 4 people, whoever we think are qualified. Because talking to all of them, some of them aren't even close to being qualified. So why waste their time and give them an expectation that they're going to be interviewed when it's not going to happen?
Mr. Fisher?
It's our duty to look through all the applicants, though, even that meet the minimum qualifications. That's what that next meeting is for. I want to make sure we plan out the additional meetings. That's why I'm having this talk. I'm not talking about just the next meeting, the meeting after that. That's part of the plan out there.
Mr. Ribble?
Oh, but you agree that we're going to have a conversation about the applicants between us as a special meeting without having the people here, correct?
Attorney DePay?
I was just going to add, so normally even before the applicants come to the board, you'd have that rubric filled out by HR that says, here are the individuals that actually qualify. And then you only get the qualified individuals, and from there, you narrow it down further, and then you schedule your interview.
Right, that's correct.
Mr. Fisher?
Yeah, that's what we're doing. I put that in the memo, so that's what we have to have that going forward, look at the rubric at that point. In regards to the special meeting, we'd have to put out the resumes at that point.
Yeah.
Correct? Yes. So, they'd already be out, whatever our notice is before that, so. Any other, Ms. Langford Fleming?
So I just want to make sure that we are all on the same page here. So we are all in agreement that we need to extend it maybe another 2 weeks. Okay. We understand that you cannot start the entire process.
That
But
is
if we
correct.
can somehow get the word out that we are in search of without having to go through those steps.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And then we need to have at least, we need to have one special meeting to go over the applicants. And then from there, I think that's when we decide what our next step is. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Real quick, anything else that maybe we're missing, Chief Montemurano? I know we've been talking through this process and as well as Attorney Dupree Bruno, but I think we've got it pretty much down, right?
I think we're good to keep moving. We'll extend it for another 2 weeks, and then we can take it from that point on.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to public comment. Attorney Dupree Bruno, would you please address public comment?
Yes, ma'am. School board policy provides the opportunity at this point in the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on this meeting's agenda. If you completed a public comment card, please provide it to staff. Public comment will be held at the podium in the center aisle in the front. Please be advised that the board will not respond during public comment to remarks made by speakers. Abusive language defined as swearing, use of profanity, or name-calling is prohibited. Speakers who fail to follow proper decorum in the chambers will be ruled out of order. Any speaker continuing with such remarks will be required to relinquish the microphone per Board Policy 0169.1 and may be removed from the chambers. There will be one warning. Per Board Policy 0169.1, the time per speaker is 3 minutes if there are 20 speakers or less. You will find a countdown on the big screens in the front of the room. Once your time has elapsed, the microphone will automatically shut off. Please state your name when you approach the microphone. Please follow staff's direction. Madam Chair, there are 2 individuals that will like to address the board during this workshop.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Will the following individuals please line up? Sergio Cruz and Denise Everly. And just a reminder that the topic is limited to only the topics that were discussed during the workshop.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, my name is Sergio Cruz, and I've been in front of you guys before. I had a slew of things I would love to talk about, but for having only 3 minutes that were all on the agenda, I wanted to focus on the advisory meetings. I genuinely think anybody who thinks, and maybe I am or maybe I'm not speaking to anybody individually up here, but anybody who thinks that that format is going to work for the betterment, especially the subset classes, they just haven't attended a DAC. They are completely unaware of how it operates, how it works. Coming back to the DAC with the agenda items that they have, with the little resources that they have, there was a little bit of false truths and narratives that were thrown throughout a lot of the presentations, and maybe it's a perspective thing. I attest, which I have been, and I'm glad that there was somebody listening, that there hasn't been equal voices on any of these, DAC, SAC, and how it all goes down. From the policies, the statutes, and everything, you know, if you're a Title I school, and I'll use this anecdote real quick, if you're a Title I school and nobody in the SAC can identify with any of those, you know, subsets that school is serving, whether they be economically challenged, whether it be ESOL, if you don't have that culture background, if you don't have that, you're going to be way off. Now, that might be great if, let's say, that subset data is working at a high level, a B, an A, a C. But when you got a subset that is a D or failing, it's clear as day you're not getting the stakeholder input you need to make effective change, which is why I advocated from the very beginning that these SACs were not lawful by sorts. I believe there's not enough recruitment for it, to kind of go back to communication and everything. And I know I'm kind of coming down, but there is literally never any actual recruitment for these. It's a very simplified, maybe text or email or voicemail that most parents kind of come in one ear and out the other. If we was to put any kind of effort towards the recruitment of the SACs, the same way that there is to kind of boast and, you know, about our accolades or how great we're doing, I think you would see that impact that they highlighted of Facebook and Instagram. If we were really putting out, this is what the SAC is. The SAC is responsible for the SIP, which is the School Improvement Plan, one of the, if not the most important pieces of document that each school kind of goes off of. Right now, they're not getting genuine stakeholder input from it. To think that it's going to somehow work its way through the DAC that is already over, I was preaching to have an ESE advisory committee added, and to see it kind of go in this direction with only 3 minutes, you're not going to hear it all. If you genuinely want to help any of these kids in the subset, have a conversation with me individually so that I can elaborate on this without it having to be contained to 3 minutes. Because I'm telling you, I can parlay it all the way from the school level to the district level. I am a huge reason, probably why this is kind of maybe going in the wrong direction, but at least being looked at. Please talk.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Denise Eberly, Vice President of Alva Inc. Just thought I'd come in and say hi, I haven't been here for a while. Mr. Rackenbacher was very excited about your Army Corps of Engineer thing being done in like November. That's only your first step. You still have the 404 EPA environmental thing going on. So originally the NNN High School was approved at $140 million. September and 5th, it increased to $169 million. The board approved another $22.5 million for the estimated cost of $162.225 million, plus phase one cost of $6,785 million, bringing the total cost up to $169,489 million. One thing we're not seeing is the annual year-over-year inflation cost related to this, which was estimated to be 10% per year, which would add about another $50 million onto that. So now we're coming up to an amount of at least about $200 to $220 million for that school. So the other thing, it will increase due to delays related to environmental issues, which right now that school is listed on the shelf. They didn't show you that slide up there for some reason, related to infrastructure, inflation, materials, labor, So you have a perfectly good school property in Lehigh Acres for Lehigh Acres students, which are the ones that require this. Within the 3-mile zone of that Lehigh Acres radius of that Lehigh Acres property is 43,000 population. Within the 3 miles of the Alva School property, your population is roughly 1,000. So when it comes to feasibility and overspending, I think that the property in Lehigh is much more fiscally responsible. Plus, it serves a greater portion of the population of where it's needed, and that's where all the development is occurring right now. And you're also having a big problem with bus drivers. To build that school out in Alva will increase bus drivers. It will increase transportation times. There will be maybe 10 kids who would even possibly be able to walk to that school. The Lehigh School, within the 2-mile radius, you have tons of families. You have 3 fire departments with EMS. You have 3 middle schools right there.
Thank you. Your time is up.
That concludes public comment.
Thank you for those that took the time to come speak to the board today. We are going to move on to the good of the order, and I'm going to start with Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through the chair, may I ask the board attorney, we have some other items of business discussion. Yes. If we could get into maybe talk about the questions you had in regard to attorney contract in regards to how that process.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. April 15th is the deadline for any contract review. Normally, there is a board liaison that is selected by the board for negotiations. If the board also chooses to have counsel, they're able to do so at the time as well. Since I cannot be your counsel, it will be my contract that will be up for discussion. So at this time, I'm requesting that the board select an individual to help with those negotiations.
Mr. Fisher.
My suggestion to the board would be to, just like we have other ones, to utilize outside counsel as well to review the contract. It's kind of the same thing as we talked about with the board auditor, make sure not all of us are attorneys to help with that, so, and as we've done with other positions, so we'll leave that up to the Madam Chair to ask.
Do I have any discussion regarding Mr. Fisher's question or request? Ms. Jordan?
I think that's a great idea. I agree with him.
Terrific. I as well. Mr. Fisher?
I would be happy, if so requested by the board, I'd be happy to continue as I have previous discussions with the board attorney. It's involving that as the liaison, so, but that's up to the board.
Mr. Ribble?
I'm fine with that.
Ms. Jordan?
No, good.
Mr. Persons?
Fine.
Shaviano? And I am as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next thing I also want to bring up is I will be emailing shortly about this is the board attorney evaluation, which will be due this month. So I'm going to send out for those new board members, I would suggest talking to Madam Board Attorney a little bit offline, just about kind of how the process works. But essentially, we individually score the board attorney, and then it's compiled, and then it is put up at a future board meeting. So it needs to be completed this month and then put on next action meeting's agenda, excuse me. So, and if anyone had any questions, comments, and concerns with that.
Seeing none.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Real quick on committees I serve, as a member of Horizon Council, our last meeting was actually, we had a pretty amazing guest. I can't remember her name. Oh, Superintendent Carlin. So she presented to, again, the Horizon Council is really a private-public partnership between the county and that entity, and a lot of obviously business leaders. Dr. Carlin had a fabulous presentation, so highlighting, the biggest thing, highlighting the amazing things we're doing and also highlighting what we need to work on. I think that's been consistent under Dr. Carlin's leadership, and I know the community really enjoys that. You know, where we're at, where we need to be at, as well as highlighting career and technical education, especially in that room. That was a big hit, and I heard a lot of positive comments afterwards on that, so kudos. Next up, a couple of us went to FSBA, but I'll talk about my role then as a board of director. Again, I'd remind everyone there's some surveys going around about the current leadership model for the board of directors for Florida School Board Association. So I would suggest checking your FSBA emails, and if you have any questions, follow up on that. I also attended the Drug Free Coalition. As I said that, you know, we had some good discussions about that and some different programs in the community. And the last thing is the foundation, the Board of Lee County. We had a very productive meeting. We actually just are in the final steps of our strategic plan, and part of that is really making sure to partner. We can do a better job together with them, partnering with the school district and making sure to, as I said, you know, make sure we utilize the programs all over the place. That's all. I'll reserve the rest till tonight. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Ribble.
Yes, as you know, I'm the liaison for the ITF, which is the Insurance Task Force. I had trouble getting on the Teams meeting last week. I finally got on at 26 minutes past 3, and they adjourned the meeting at 28 minutes past 3. So they were kind enough to send me the minutes, though. So we have the meeting this Thursday, and I will be here in person. I'm not going to do Teams, but just real quickly, just to give you an update. Everyone talks about benefits and salaries, but I got to tell you, we aren't too shabby when it comes to providing benefits for all of our employees. And just to give you a number of what that costs this year versus last year, our monthly cost this year is $9.6 million, up from $8.9 million, or a $700,000 increase each and every month for benefits. As far as claims go, we had 25 large claims over $250,000 this year, versus 16 last year. So as I get more involved in the committee, I can drill down and take a look at, you know, how we're paying some of these claims, and are we getting the best bang for our buck with hospitals and through litigation. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Ms. Jordan.
Thank you. And I did have a question regarding the attorneys, because are we not looking at the other attorneys as well? the other attorneys? You had sent us an email regarding the other attorneys, their contracts?
No, the other attorneys, their contracts would end on June 30th. If the board chooses to pull their contract, or if there's an issue with the contract and the board chooses not to renew the contracts. On the flip side, the attorneys, all of us, all four of us, have an obligation to advise the board within 60 days if we choose to terminate our services.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted clarification on that one. Okay, well, today began Read Across America. I was at Edison Park this morning, and lo and behold, my grandson showed up, and I had to go read to his class. He was not thrilled about having his grandmother in his classroom because he had to say, "That's my grandmother," but it was fun. Also, there's a lot that we do in between each meeting now that we only meet once a month. So there's just so much that goes on. We had the Golden Apple, it was like Golden Apple Month, where, we had several events, the Golden Apple finalists, it's just an amazing group of people, and congratulations to all of them. I had a town hall meeting in North Fort Myers, and actually it was the first one that they've ever had over there. And Dr. Carlin, thank you so much for being there and your team, because I heard such, and Mr. Persons, I heard so much positiveness about thank you for coming on this side of the river, even though we do go on the other side of the river. But they really appreciated the fact that if they had a question, if we could not answer that at that particular time, that your team was there and they were able to, connect with them and get their answers at that particular time. So thank you for that. That meant a lot. I attended the annual community prayer Dunbar, and that was, it's a prayer event that they do every year, and it's for all the violence that has taken place within, it coincides with the Fort Myers PD, the Sheriff's Department, Cape Coral Police, and it's the violence that has occurred for that this year. And even though violence is down, there still was some violence. Of course, we see the violence that's out there. Let's see, Town Hall. We met with, I mentioned this earlier about the meet and greet with Senator Martin. We invited him to Franklin Park because he had never been out there. We really wanted him to understand what we do out there in the community partnership schools. And it was a great event for community partnership school. It was a great event for Dr. German. I really appreciate her hospitality and that she took him around and toured him. And he really understands now the capacity of what we can do and what the benefit is for the community. And thank you, Mr. Fisher, for being there as well. But I thought it was a really good meeting and a great understanding of what we do at Franklin Park and what we can do across the district. And then with that, the very next day we had Franklin Park. Dr. German, she created this, it's called Impact Franklin Park, and it's the meeting of the church base and community, and there was about 150 people who showed up for the school. And it was, how do we support your school? How do we support your teachers? How do we support your children? And she had these sign-up sheets for everybody to sign. So before they walked out that door, they had something that they were going to do, whether it was coming and opening doors, doing the lunch duty, but they were definitely engaged and they put their name on it. So they've signed and they are definitely going to be a part of the support of that school. And I have to tell you, going around to the different schools and how they're really embracing community and their school families and bringing them in, it's really been amazing. Same with Colonial and all these other ones where you're actually seeing 100+ people there, which is great when you see that. Then I also had a shout out to North Fort Myers Academy. Their kindergarten and first grade, I don't care what they did, it was going to be fabulous. They did Circus, and the kids did a fabulous job. And Beetlejuice is coming. Also will be coming here next month to North Fort Myers Academy. And then 2 more things and I'm done. World Language Day at Dunbar High School. I had the opportunity to go there this past weekend, and they had middle schools and high schools throughout the county, and they presented their artwork, songs, dance, competition, They even competed in sign language, which was pretty amazing when you see them singing and competing in sign language. And they had all types of competition on how well do you know France, how well do you know, whatever the language was that you were taking, that's what the quiz bowl was regarding. And the kids were just amazing in all the information that they knew. But the artwork depicted their country and who they were. It was just really a beautiful event. And then my last one was the Close-Up Youth Council Expo that Mr. Ribble spoke about. That was absolutely amazing. Those young people came there. They came up with a topic that was really near and dear to their heart and what they care about. They actually had the opportunity to go to Tallahassee and present. So out of all, I think there was 12 to 15, out of all of them, 4 they chose collectively to go up to Tallahassee and to present to the legislators. So that was really an amazing feat for them. And this is all new. Some of them were just there and they put this all together within like a 2-day span. So they had to do the research, find the data, and present. And they had never done that before. So I really appreciate our ESOL department who put this together, and I just want to thank them very much. And that's it for my report. And congratulations.
Mr. Persons.
Just real quick, I want to give a little shout out to the President of the Florida Senate, President Albritton. We take a group from the Lee Chamber and the school district from Lemuel Till Middle School, and the district provides the bus, but it leaves quite a bit of money for all the hotel rooms and food for the students, and of course they're not going to pay anything. Last year, the Senate gave us $5,000, the president, Pasadoma, and then the chamber raised $7,000 to cover the rest of the expenses. And that wasn't real easy. This year, we asked the president of the Senate, Ben Albritton, for another $5,000. And he says, that doesn't seem like enough. And he says, well, we try to raise the rest. He says, how much is the rest? And he said, $7. I says, I'll just write a check for it all. Wow. So he's covering all the expenses except for the bus trip, and which we cover. And it's about 30 students. It's going to be April 7th, 8th, and 9th. We'll be up in Tallahassee, and it's all organized, and it's really good. It's a great civics lesson. They watch the Senate in action, the House in action, and they tour the Supreme Court, Florida Supreme Court, and then they unfortunately make a trip over to FSU. But I keep telling them, Gainesville's not that far from there. But we're looking forward to it. I will miss the next meeting in person, but I will Zoom in, and because it's a school activity. So that's all for now. Thank you.
Ms. Shaviano.
So I was able to visit Bayshore Elementary, and I got sorted, and I'm now part of the House of Invicta. So there. So I'm also going to learn my chant, and we'll sing it on this side of the table, apparently. And yes, to kick off Read Across America Week, I've got a couple schools, but yesterday I went out to Manatee Elementary, and I read, it was the day the crayons quit. I hadn't heard of it. And the kids were super excited. And it was a 4th grade class. And I went home to my daughter, who's also in 4th grade, and I told her about this book. And she's like, yeah, I love it. I was like, never heard of it, but it sounded good. So that was cool. And I'll save the rest for my action meeting because there's a lot. But thank you.
That's great.
Thank you. I'll just be brief. I want to say thank you, first of all, to Ms. Holland and Tanglewood Elementary School for coming this afternoon. That's always such a great event. And thank you, Mr. Fisher, for always setting that up for all of us to be able to be a part of that. Yeah, the Golden Apple events are super exciting. I look forward to April 25th, Golden Apple banquet. So that will be exciting. All of these teachers work so hard to go through this process. It is so grueling. they have to submit so many pieces. And I just want to thank those that go through the trouble of doing that. I did get to attend Alva. I did a walkthrough, and it was really sweet because it reminded me so much of the way I grew up. And I did pet the cow. Miss Winfrey promised she would let me know because she's expecting in the next week. So the garden out there is unbelievable. They gave me a couple peppers to take home, goats, 2 pigs, I mean, on and on, chickens, and like a pet squirrel running around. So it's such a great environment for the kids to have so many hands-on things, and it's so nice to see, kids eating outside, engaging, having conversation, little vitamin D. And I know that they're going to be sharing some information, I think, soon here at maybe the April meeting. Okay, that's awesome. That's terrific. But to piggyback off of that, I was able to talk to Leisha Roy about our gardens, and we have so many gardens in the school. But something that we did discuss that I think that we could possibly discuss in our one-on-ones is somehow developing a policy, because it doesn't exist, for schools that do start a garden, for the garden to continue even when administration changes, even when a teacher changes. Because what is happening is, teachers may be so excited that just might be something that they really love to do, but then they transfer schools. Now they've got to find someone else to take over that responsibility. And we've gotten this amazing grant from Sprouts, and in order to continue to show that we are so grateful, I think we need to come up with a way that if your school has a garden, you're committed to continuing to keep the garden up, no matter the change at the school. So I just thought that was something we may need to discuss in our one-on-ones. And then thank you, Mr. Ribble. He was able to attend the Health Advisory Committee meeting. I had a family emergency, so I really appreciate it. I know you're going to talk about that maybe later. Do you want to talk about that topic right now, or I don't mean to put you on the spot?
I'll cover it tonight.
Okay. And then lastly, the other thing that I would really, as the athletic liaison that you all have asked me to do, I have been at so many games, like flag football, girls. So glad that that's happening in the district. Yeah. Beach volleyball. I won't say, well, I will say it. Fort Myers High beat Barron Collier the other night, which is really incredible. That's a big deal in beach volleyball. But we've got sport. I was at Bonita High School last week, and all at the same time, there was a softball game, a beach game, a flag football game, and a baseball game all being held on the campus. So that was super exciting. But something to put on your radar, there is going to be, I don't know if it's going to be policy or if it's something that we adopt as different districts, but they're coming down the pipeline is checking cardiac testing for our 9th grader on up athletes. That is a huge lift, because every student has to have that evaluation. So we are going to need to have some conversations with physicians that would be willing to volunteer. So just something I wanted to put on your radar. But other than that, that's all I have. Attorney DePay Bruno.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Attorney Huffman and I, we went to the Florida School Board Attorneys Association conference this past weekend, and it was an excellent conference as always. There was a lot of discussion, some heated debate actually amongst the attorneys on several things. So we always appreciate the ability to meet with our state counterparts. In addition, just to clarify, Ms. Jordan, the attorneys need to know by May 1st if the board is choosing to renew or not renew their contracts. And then I wanted to congratulate both Ms. Jordan and Mr. Ribble. They both got awards, one from Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, as well as the Latin Times. So congratulations on that. That's always wonderful to get that recognition from the community. So thank you very much.
Dr. Carlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to defer most of my comments to this evening, but just wanted to recognize the large body of work that you all completed this afternoon, taking a look at 12 items, including public comment. The work continues. The work is urgent, and we just appreciate your good thinking, your great questions, and for pushing us to continue to do better. Just want to publicly recognize our board for the strength around that, so thank you.
All right, thank you. Today, we have a student performance at 5:45 p.m., followed by an action meeting at 6 p.m. At this point, seeing no other business before this body and seeing no objection, this meeting is adjourned and the time is 4:29 p.m. Thank you and have a wonderful day.